This story begins with our protagonist named Mikami Satoru, who has a normal and stable life, but no romantic life. He's a and has no girlfriend. Satoru meets up with a friend from work who has a girl by his side, and they gather for a meeting. On their way to the meeting place, a guy suddenly appears with a knife in hand, heading towards Satoru's companions. However, our protagonist jumps to shield them and takes the attack, resulting in a severe wound. While he's out, Satoru starts hearing voices that offer him enhancements every time he mentions something. He mistakes these voices for his friend and asks him to do one last favor, to destroy the hard drive of his computer. In his final thoughts, Satoru declares that if he is reborn, he will go after all the women and be more aggressive with his way of life. He also muses that almost at 40 must be a great achievement, considering himself a great sage. The voice hears this and understands these will be his unique abilities. With all this, Satoru, but there's no time for mourning because Satoru goes through the process of reincarnation and has to get used to his new body, which is a cute little slime. Some time passes since Satoru has gotten used to his slime body, but he gets bored since all he does is eat but not sleep, and he's alone surrounded only by plants and rocks. The voice that sounded earlier when he was responds, letting us know it's a system, explaining Satoru's abilities like Predator, which allows him to eat and absorb everything, assimilating the qualities of what he consumes into his body. It also mentions his other ability, Great Stage, which gives him a great perception of the world. Satoru understands that his Predator ability will be useful since the system explains that the plants growing around him are some of the rarest used for potions and healing. He concludes that he will eat all the plants to store them in his body. With all the plants consumed, he starts to wonder what the shiny stones are, to which the system indicates they are very valuable and rare magic stones. Satoru doesn't think twice and devours all the stones in the cave, but gets so excited that he falls into a lake. However, our protagonist is clever and accidentally creates a new ability, thus emerging from the lake. He bumps into something that hurts him but doesn't cause pain, and the system explains that Satoru is immune to pain and that, thanks to being a slime, he regenerates. Satoru hears a voice calling him from afar, which seems to be a very powerful creature that can read minds. The creature offers a deal to our protagonist. It will give him sight in exchange for talking to him. Satoru accepts, and the creature teaches him the magic sense ability, which he learns easily. The system greatly enhances this ability, allowing him to finally see. Satoru thanks the creature for teaching him this ability and sees that it is a dragon who was sealed centuries ago named Veldora, the Storm Dragon, one of the 4 true dragons of the world. Satoru is initially afraid of the dragon, but eventually gets used to him as the dragon explains his situation. The dragon mentions that it's very common to find travelers and reincarnated people from another world, but Satoru seems to be a special case. Satoru listens to all this and decides to look for the others, but Veldora asks him to stay and explains his past, mentioning that he fought against a human hero who was a summoned being. Summoned beings are only used as since their souls are cursed. Satoru feels bad for the dragon and the world he's in now, so he proposes friendship to the dragon, who appears to be a tsundere but eventually accepts. By the way, Tamura fulfilled his promise to Satoru by destroying his PC. Satoru begins to think about how to free Veldora from the seal, analyzing the magic involved, but it will take a long time, so they decide to use another plan. However, there's a problem with this plan. Veldora must enter Satoru's stomach to force the seal open. The dragon laughs at this since it sounds fun to do something so dangerous after so many years. Before doing so, they must give each other names to become equal in souls, as named beings have special abilities and can form alliances. Satoru names the dragon Tempest, thus renaming him Veldora Tempest, and Satoru renames himself Rimuru Tempest. Rimuru begins to devour the seal, analyzing the ability and making it his own. Until the seal disappears, Veldora must remain inside Rimuru. We discover that our protagonist is in the great forest of Jura, where various scattered countries exist, and Rimuru is in the kingdom of Blumend. The humans of the kingdom of Blumend are worried about Veldora's disappearance and the consequences it will bring. Rimuru, unaware of the human kingdom's situation, is wandering around, eating, searching for an exit from the cave, and unlocking many abilities along the way. In part of the cave, he encounters a monster that Rimuru decides to attack. He realizes that the abilities he has and is obtaining are very strong. With the monster defeated, Rimuru decides to absorb it, gaining the monster's abilities and even transforming into it. So he decides to absorb all the monsters he finds, gaining many abilities, including the ability to speak. After a long time, he reaches a large door that opens and he encounters human adventurers. Rimuru takes this opportunity to escape from the cave. As he advances, he is greeted by armed goblins who treat Rimuru as a powerful being. Although Rimuru doesn't realize this, The goblins are convinced that Rimuru is very powerful because they can sense his power, so they ask him for help. Rimuru arrives at the goblin village and learns that Veldora's presence kept magical beasts away, and because of his disappearance, the monsters are more agitated than ever. Rimuru thinks he can't do anything since he doesn't consider himself strong and imposing. So he asks the system to explain his power, realizing he was unintentionally emitting a powerful aura. Rimuru hides all his aura and assumes the role of a powerful being, accepting the goblins' request to scare away the monsters. He asks for something in return, even though he doesn't want anything, to maintain the appearance of a powerful being. The village leader promises to give Rimuru the loyalty of his people in exchange for protecting them. Just then, powerful wolves, the monsters in question, appear in the distance. Rimuru doesn't waste time and agrees to help them. Rimuru doesn't know how to train the village since they are too weak to fight, but the goblins seem determined, which lifts his spirits. The first thing Rimuru does is heal the wounded using the resources in his body, and the next thing is to build a defensive fence around the village. The wolves prepare for a night attack, but Rimuru and the village are ready. The wolves underestimate the monsters, but Rimuru has set traps around, managing to stop all of them and the group leader. Rimuru asks the remaining wolves to surrender, but doesn't seem to work, so he uses Predator on the wolf leader, taking his form to scare them off. However, the wolves surrender instead of fleeing, increasing Rimuru's followers, which is a problem since he now has the responsibility of taking care of them, but doesn't know how. Rimuru comes up with the idea of making pairs, one wolf and one goblin, so they learn to live together. He also emphasizes the basic needs of the shelter, but there's an inconvenience. He doesn't know how to name each of them. He decides to give them names, which makes everyone burst with joy, but Rimuru doesn't understand why. During the naming process, Rimuru, as it seems to have used up a lot of magic, according to the system, causing him to be unable to do anything for 3 days. Rimuru finally can move and notices new faces. Even the leader, who seemed like an old man about to die, is now muscular and strong. This transformation has happened to everyone in the village thanks to the names given by Rimuru, making them stronger than ever. With everyone in the village evolved, Rimuru decides to create some rules. No attacking humans, no fighting among themselves, and no looking down on other monsters. With all this said, Rigur is named Goblin Lord to lead the village. Rimuru divides the tasks among everyone, but no one knows construction and crafting skills, so Rigur mentions that there's another race that does, the Dwarves. Rimuru then sets off on a journey with a few from the village to meet the Dwarves. During the journey, we learn that the Kingdom of the Elves is a kingdom with great military power, and thanks to this, free trade is accepted among all races, including the Elves, whom Rimuru is very eager to meet. They finally arrive at the kingdom, and only Gobta, a goblin who doesn't seem to have changed much despite receiving a name, and Rimuru enter as a large group might attract attention. At the entrance, they encounter trouble with some, but Rimuru's first rule was not to fight with humans, so he asks Gobta to neither see nor hear what he will do. Rimuru decides to scare them, but the are stubborn and attack Rimuru. He handles them effortlessly, but his attack was so strong that it affected other beings around, drawing the attention of the gate guards. Rimuru and Gobta end up imprisoned. Just as they are about to be released, news arrives that the dwarves are being attacked in the mines. Rimuru hears this and offers to help, providing potions for the wounded. The dwarves return with Rimuru, who stayed waiting in the prison, and they thank him for giving the potions. In return, Rimuru asks to speak with a blacksmith. The next day, Rimuru is guided by Kaido into the city to where the blacksmith is, whose name is Kajin, Kaido's brother. The dwarves saved by Rimuru's potions are also there. Kaido listens to Rimuru's request in gratitude for saving his people, but says he can't fulfill it because he's busy with orders given by the kingdom's minister, an impossible task due to insufficient materials and time. Rigur remembers he has the materials since he absorbed them in the cave, so he gives them to finish the job and come to the village to help. However, there's another problem. Making the swords will take a long time. Rimuru absorbs an existing sword and using the minerals he has, starts copying them using the system, finishing the job immediately. The dwarves want to throw a party as the swords are made, so they take Rimuru to an establishment with many elf girls, leaving Rimuru and after many thoughts from Rimuru, a worker at the establishment offers to show him his destined person. Rimuru and the others are curious, so he accepts. In the vision, we see that his destined person is a very beautiful girl with Japanese features, but they can't keep. Celebrating as the celebration is ruined by the kingdom's minister, who gave the sword order. At first glance, Rimuru notices he is an arrogant and petulant tyke who wants to mock Kajin for the order, but he is left speechless upon finding out the order was completed. As the annoying character he is, he decides to go against Rimuru, emphasizing that he's a monster who shouldn't be in that establishment. The workers don't want any trouble, so they try to calm him down, but he spills on Rimuru. Rimuru holds back since he doesn't want the problems to escalate and because the bastard is a minister. However, Kajin punches him in the face and finishes him off with a second blow, knocking him down along with his assistant. Rimuru is worried because attacking a kingdom's minister is a crime and Kajin will be in trouble, but Kajin asks Rimuru if he can accept him in his village. Rimuru nods happily because Kajin is a talented blacksmith, though not everything can end well. Rimuru and company are arrested and find Gabe again, who has been asleep since the last time they were imprisoned. Kajin explains why the minister hates him and asks Rimuru again to accept him in his village. Kaijin's workers also decide to follow him, which makes Rimuru very happy as his family grows larger. The day of the trial arrives, which is a rigged trial, and because of this, unfair sentences are given to Kaijin and the others. However, the king who was present speaks to Kaijin and asks if he wishes to return under his command, but Kaijin refuses as he has a new master. The king understands the situation and changes the sentence, exiling Kaijin and the others. In the end, the king also exiles the minister because the losses his kingdom suffered are immense and losing connections with Rimuru is a blow to the kingdom. Even so, the king sends spies to watch Rimuru since he is essentially a walking disaster. In the kingdom of Blumen, suspicions about Veldora's disappearance are confirmed thanks to guild adventurers who receive new orders to investigate the Jura forest. Outside, they encounter a masked person who asks to go with them to the forest. They are hesitant at first, but the more members, the safer the journey, so they accept. Rimuru is checking the surroundings of the village and the new additions are doing their respective jobs. Kajin is in the forge, Garm is in charge of Gord handles crafts, and Murd is responsible for architecture. Additionally, while Rimuru and the others were in the Dwarven kingdom, goblins scattered throughout the forest heard about Rimuru's village, so they all gathered to join, adding 500 more members to the village. Rimuru had to name them all to accommodate them in the village. In the village, Rigur, who was promoted to Goblin King due to the number of inhabitants, alerts Rimuru about humans in the forest. They turn out to be adventurers from the Kingdom of Blue and being chased by monsters. The masked person is with them and easily handles the monsters, but one is still alive and attacks the masked person, who, for some reason, can't defend herself. Out of nowhere, Rimuru's new ability finishes off the monster, saving the group. Rimuru introduces himself to the humans, and it turns out that the masked person is Rimuru's destined person. The adventurers are welcomed into the village and Rigur introduces them. Everyone is amazed that Rimuru Slime is the master of everyone. With the matters resolved while eating, Rimuru is informed about the adventurer's mission, realizing that Veldora's disappearance was more serious than he thought. Rimuru offers them lodging until they recover. Rimuru goes to talk with the masked person, whose name is Shizu, and confirms that she is also from Japan. We learn that Shizu is a summoned person used as a and she tells her past about coming from torn Japan. Rimuru notices this is an uncomfortable topic, so he decides to show her something incredible, sharing his memories of modern Japan. While doing so, Shizu complains of pain but mentions it's nothing serious. In a memory of Shizu, we see that when she was summoned, she was merged with Ifrit, the being that controls fire. Shizu was summoned by the Demon King himself, and being a summoned person, was forced to do horrible things. In the village, Shizu decides to leave as she wants to find the one who summoned her. Rimuru understands and bids her farewell along with the other adventurers. However, just as they are about to say goodbye, Shizu experiences pain caused by Ifrit, who takes control of her body. Seeing her flame, everyone realizes she is not just anyone but an adventurer who disappeared decades ago and was a companion of the previous hero. Seeing the dangerous situation, Rimuru orders the village to be evacuated, but the adventurers stay to fight alongside Rimuru. Ifrit releases minions that destroy the surroundings, so Rimuru tries to go against Ifrit while the adventurers distract the minions. Rimuru summons Rangma to move faster, but the minions still pursue them. Rimuru realizes his attacks do no damage, but the adventurers' magic affects the monsters. Rimuru asks the group's mage to send him a magic attack, which he devours and starts using en masse, destroying the minions. However, one minion self-destructs in front of the adventurers, leaving them badly injured. Rimuru orders Rangma to take them to safety. Finally, Rimuru faces Ifrit, who creates clones to surround him. Rimuru manages to destroy the copies, but Ifrit still has not shown his full power, casting a spell to raise a firestorm. Inside the firestorm, Rimuru accepts his fate but the system reminds him that fire attacks do no damage to him. With this, Rimuru captures Ifrit and finally murders him. Shizu is bedridden from the previous battle with Rimuru by her side. She tells Rimuru about her past, how she met the previous hero who saved her, and how she lived a freer life thanks to them. She also mentions that she was a teacher at an institute for children from another world. As her final wish, Shizu asks Rimuru to devour her as she does not want to disappear into another world, and she asks him to continue the tasks she is leaving behind, like finding the Demon King who summoned her to give him a beating. The adventurers who were going to visit Shizu are surprised to find that Rimuru now has a human body identical to Shizu's, learning that Shizu is... At the end of the day, the adventurers must return to their country to report what happened and about Shizu, but not before receiving gifts from Rimuru, such as armor for each of them. The village's progress is going well, so Rimuru steps aside to check the functionality of Ifrit's abilities, which include using clones and his human body, realizing it is a genderless body, neither male nor female. He also finds that he can finally have the human sensation of enjoying things. Rimuru decides to keep Shizu's mask as proof and a reminder of the promise he made to her. With everything clear, Rimuru asks for a banquet as he wants to try the food of this world. Rimuru meets with the hunting group and is informed that the surrounding monsters are moving more than before, giving him a sense of danger, so he summons Ranga to accompany them in case something happens. With everything in order in the village, Rimuru heads to the cave where Veldora was sealed to test Shizu's abilities, since they are very powerful and in the open air would be too conspicuous. One ability in particular, called Degeneration, is very special because it can combine or separate abilities to create new ones like Black Flame. Rimuru realizes that his abilities are very powerful, so he tries out Shizu's mask, which according to her, suppressed the magic of whoever wore it. Rimuru puts it on, and the system clarifies that with the mask on, he can be perceived as an ordinary human. However, just as he finishes trying it on, Ranga contacts Rimuru urgently. Noting the urgency, Rimuru heads to the location and finds the entire hunting group on the ground, defeated by some unknown individuals. Ranga is fighting two figures who appear to be part of the same group, and Rigur is also fighting, but is no match for his opponent. Rimuru calls them to his side. Rigur explains the situation, saying that the enemies are ogres and used magic to defeat the others. Rimuru also notices that these ogres are using Japanese and armor, so he decides to talk as he is curious, and they did not kill any of his group. However, the ogres do not respond and instead accuse Rimuru of monsters, with the definitive proof being the mask he is wearing. Rimuru does not understand the situation, but realizes there is no choice but to fight. He asks Ranga to go after the group's mage, but not to kill her, while he will handle the other 5. The battle begins and the red ogre starts the attack, but he is very slow. Rimuru targets the largest ogre, putting him asleep with a paralyzing ability. Rimuru is attacked by another enemy, but he dodges and captures her with his ability. A third enemy arrives, but Rimuru breaks his sword with body reinforcement and sends him flying with one punch. Only 2 enemies remain, but Rimuru wants to stop the fight. The old ogre names all the abilities Rimuru used, surprising him as it confirms the old ogre is strong. Despite this, Rimuru wants to end the fight, but the red ogre keeps accusing Rimuru of various things, calling him Majin. Our slime still does not understand what is happening. In a moment of distraction, the old ogre tries to Rimuru from behind, but he dodges, losing only an arm, which regenerates immediately thanks to his slime ability. This scares the 2 ogres, so they decide to use fire magic. But as we know, Rimuru is immune to fire. Rimuru, tired of playing, decides to go all out. He removes the mask and unleashes all his magic to invoke Black Flame along with Black Lightning. He uses this ability only to make the ogres surrender. Even so, they decide to fight, but the group's mage, who seems to be important along with the red ogre, asks them to stop as Rimuru is very strong, and if he had wanted to, it would have been from the beginning. Finally, the fight stops, and the ogres realize it was all a misunderstanding. They deeply apologize to Rimuru for the trouble they caused. Rimuru does not mind, but invites them to his village as he wants to know what happened to them. In the village, a feast is being celebrated, and Rimuru can finally feel what a human normally feels. However, putting the celebration aside, the dwarves are conversing with the ogres and learn that the orcs attack the ogres. This is incredible since orcs are a very weak race, and the weak do not attack the strong, but still, the orcs attacked. The red ogre explained that the orcs attacked in a very tactical manner and with absurd numbers, in addition to having armor. All of this astonished the dwarves even more, confirming that the orcs are not acting alone. They explain that the orcs' allies are called Majin, who are part of the Demon King's army. Rimuru listens to everything that happened and the current situation with the orcs and wants to know what they will do in the future. He realizes that the ogres do not have a fixed plan for the future. They want revenge but do not know how to start anew. Rimuru suggests that they become his subordinates, but the ogres refuse as that would involve the village and Rimuru and the ogres' plans for revenge. Rimuru does not mind as helping others comes first, and the orcs might attack them too since they are with the Demon King and might seek control of the surrounding areas. The ogres carefully consider Rimuru's offer, but the decision ultimately falls on the ogre princes. The next day, the Ogre Prince presents himself to Rimuru, accepting his offer, but with the condition that once they kill the orcs, they will be free. Rimuru has no problem with this and welcomes them with open arms. Before making them part of his village, he has to name each one, which surprises everyone. During the naming process, Rimuru... After a while, he wakes up to find that all the ogres have evolved into Kajin. The prince is named Benimaru, the princess is named Shuna, the other female ogre is Cheyenne, the old ogre is Hakuro, the ninja-like ogre is Sui, and the largest ogre is Kurog. These are the highest level monsters in the village. Meanwhile, the orc army advances through the Jura forest and seems to be heading towards Lake Sis, territory of the Lizardmen who think they can defend themselves. However, it turns out that the orcs number over 200,000, which worries everyone, leading them to conclude that an Orc Lord has been born. The Lizardmen, though not weak monsters, prepare for and the Lizardman King instructs his son to go to nearby towns to seek help, even from weaker monsters. In the village, Hakuro is training Gabda and a few others in swordsmanship, but Hakuro's training is intense. Rimuru talks with Benimaru, who explains that the only monster capable of controlling so many orcs is the Orc Lord, a peerless monster born only once every several centuries. He also recounts that shortly before the attack, Imagine visited and wanted to name Benimaru, but he refused, causing Imagine to leave resentfully. Sui reminds them that the Imagine's name is Gelmud. With Sui's appearance, he reports that the Lizardmen are visiting nearby monster towns to negotiate. In the village, with the addition of the ogres, the clothing has greatly improved due to the implementation of silk, which is special as it is made from monster threads and has magic. Shuna is in charge of this area as she specializes in it. Rimuru is very happy since the silk resembles that of his world, so he leaves them to work while Shien tells him she has other things to do. We also learn that Cheyenne has taken upon herself to work as Rimuru's secretary, which Rimuru does not mind as she is basically a secretary and a bodyguard. However, this seems to cause problems as Cheyenne and Shuna exude rivalry because of Rimuru, but he somehow calms things down. At the ogre's house, Benimaru, Hakuro, and Sui are waiting for food, but Rimuru tells them that today's cook is Cheyenne, which scares the ogres. Rimuru notices everyone's reaction and thinks Cheyenne's cooking will be amazing, but the reality is horrible as her food looks disgusting. Out of consideration for Cheyenne, he has to eat it, but when trying to take a bite, the food seems to have a life of its own. Even the system helps him figure out how to eat it, so he follows the instructions but accidentally feeds it to Gabda, who starts choking and becomes stiff. From that day on, Rimuru orders Benimaru to supervise Cheyenne's cooking. Outside the village, the son of the Lizardman King named Gabiru is making good progress with the requests for cooperation from nearby villages, managing to gather nearly 7,000 goblins. However, they still need more because the orcs number in the tens of thousands. The last village they need to visit is Rimuru's, but they know nothing about it or how strong its inhabitants are. They have only heard rumors, which the Lizardmen do not believe. In the village, Kuro turns out to be the Ogre's blacksmith, who is very skilled. Thanks to his knowledge and craft, he starts getting along well with Kajin, which makes Rimuru happy as he now has two talented blacksmiths with different ideas who work well together. Rigur arrives at the forge to inform them that envoys from the Lizardmen have arrived. Benimaru, Cheyenne, and Hakuro also hear about the envoys and ask to accompany Rimuru to the meeting. During the meeting, Gabiru introduces himself and immediately declares that Rimuru's village will be under his command. Rimuru and the others are annoyed by these statements, but Rigur calms things down to clear up the misunderstanding. However, Gabiru insists that due to the orc invasion, the village will be under his power. A little late to react, Gabiru realizes that everyone in the village is strong and there are no goblins, but he still thinks he is superior and demands to see the one who tamed the wolves. Rimuru explains that he made them his allies. Gabiru does not believe a slime could have done that, so Rimuru summons Ranga in his full form to speak with Gabiru and explain things. Instead of asking important questions, Gabiru declares it is impossible for a slime to tame a wolf and announces that he will defeat Rimuru, which angers everyone. Ranga is about to attack him for his words when Gabda appears, having survived Cheyenne's food because his body developed immunity to the poison. Ranga takes the opportunity to send Gabda to fight Gabiru, but Gabda does not want to fight. Rigur promises him a personal win if he wins, but if he loses, he will have to eat Cheyenne's food again. With this promise, Gabda becomes serious and gets ready. The battle begins and Gabda defeats Gabiru in just 2 moves using a shadow skill, surprising everyone as Gabda, despite his useless appearance, proves to be very talented. With Gabiru defeated, Rimuru makes it clear that they will not be anyone's servants and will consider an alliance if they want allies. With that said, the Lizardmen withdraw but promise to return. The main members hold a meeting. Sui reports everything he knows about the orcs. who are marching directly to the Lizardman's territory. They do not yet know the reason for the Orc army, but the most obvious answer seems to be Orc Lord. In the middle of the meeting, Sui receives a call from one of his clones, informing him that a Dryad is requesting an audience with Rimuru, which surprises everyone because they are very rare. Rimuru agrees to see her, and she appears directly in the meeting. The Dryad, who turns out to be a very beautiful being named Trainee, directly asks Rimuru to defeat the Orc Lord, confirming the suspicions of its appearance. Rimuru is still in shock at Trainee's request and doesn't know how to respond. Benimaru steps forward as he doesn't trust the words of a stranger and believes the village, which is mostly made up of goblins, isn't as strong compared to other beings. However, Trainee isn't there merely because of the village. She's there because of Rimuru's monstrous strength. Rimuru seriously considers Trainee's request but asks for time as if he gets involved, so will his people. With Trainee present, the meeting continues to understand the cause of the Orcs' attacks. Shuma has a suggestion since Sui seems to have investigated the Ogres' village after the attack, confirming her suspicions that the Orcs use their enemies' bodies as food supplies. This is because the Orc Lord has the Starved ability, which he shares with his subordinates, allowing them to absorb their prey's strength and abilities. This ability is similar to Rimuru's Predator, but with the disadvantage of infinite hunger and gaining more power. Rimuru confirms all the doubts and questions he had, realizing they will inevitably be attacked due to their strength and abilities. Trainee again requests Rimuru's help to defeat the Orc Lord, but he still doesn't fully trust her words. He leaves his decision to the system, which confirms that Dryads are just beings and dislike malice. Before making his decision, Cheyenne steps forward, saying yes, which prompts Rimuru to confirm that they will go to war against the Orcs. Since the Orcs are numerous, Rimuru thinks the Lizardmen would make good allies but doesn't have much faith in them due to Gabiru's obnoxious and unreliable nature. Sui volunteers to speak directly with the Lizardmen leader. In the forest, Gabiru wakes up from his defeat and misunderstands that Gobta is the true ruler of monsters. While everyone claims Rimuru cheated, someone among them named Laplace, a servant of Gelmud, brings information that the Orcs are being controlled by an Orc Lord. This information makes Gabiru believe his father won't be able to handle the situation, giving him ideas to overthrow his father. The Orcs approach the Lizardmen, reducing hope for the Lizardman chief, but Sui arrives, requesting an audience to discuss an alliance with Rimuru's village. He explains all the details of the meeting in the village, surprising them that a Dryad personally requested Rimuru's intervention. However, the Lizardmen are proud and haughty monsters, so one of the guards insults Rimuru. Sui is about to kill him, but the Lizardman chief intervenes, thinking the alliance offer is good but with one condition: to meet Rimuru. Sui agrees, as Rimuru will also want to meet the Lizardman chief. With the audience over, the Lizardman chief announces the reinforcements to his people, asking them to hold out until they arrive, boosting their motivation. 4 days have passed, and the Ogres arrive gradually. Gabiru goes straight to his father to seize power and leadership of the Lizardmen. With the change in power, Gabiru launches an attack on the Orcs, but being young and ignorant, he doesn't know the atrocities an Orc Lord can bring. Rimuru and the strongest members head to finalize the alliance with the Lizardmen. Sui, who is monitoring the surroundings, reports that a Lizardman is fighting the Orcs. It turns out to be the Lizardman chief's daughter. Rimuru orders her rescue as they approach her position. The group arrives where Sui is, but he has already dealt with the enemies. However, the Lizardman chief's daughter is severely injured. Rimuru uses one of his potions to save her. When she learns her savior is Rimuru, she begs him to save her father and her brother, Gabiru. Rimuru listens to her sincere plea. Before he can respond, Cheyenne jumps in, proclaiming that Rimuru will do it easily, leaving Rimuru no choice but to agree. First, you must confirm the alliance. As the Lizardman chief's daughter, she acts as a representative to accept the alliance. With the alliance established, Rimuru orders Sui to rescue the Lizardman chief, and they advance toward the territory where the war is taking place. The Lizardmen are outnumbered, and as a result, a few are devoured, causing the Orcs to absorb their characteristics. This makes the Orcs stronger and faster, enabling them to surround Gabiru and his men, who finally realize the atrocity of the Orc Lord. Gabiru rallies the forces to escape, but they can't leave the Goblins who join them behind, so they have to fight and flee as best they can. Just as they are about to do so, an Orc general appears, who is incredibly strong, frightening Gabiru as he realizes that if a general is this monstrous, the Orc Lord will be even more powerful. In a secluded part of the forest, Gelmud and Laplace are celebrating their plan to control the forest, which is going well. Suddenly, Trainee appears, startling them as a Dryad is very powerful, especially in the forest. Trainee declares that she will end the root of the evil and summons a wind elemental spirit, launching a brutal attack. They manage to defend themselves and immediately escape, as their goal is almost achieved. Trainee fails to eliminate them, so she leaves everything in Rimuru's hands to deal with the Orc Lord. Gabiru begins the battle with the Orc general, but as he feared, the Orc is too strong. With just one ability and close attacks, he defeats Gabiru. Just as he is about to kill him, Gabda appears to save him, along with Ranga and Rimuru's cavalry squad. The Orc, seeing this, prepares to attack, but before he can do anything, a complete falls on the Orc army. Amidst the Benimaru and his companions appear to take revenge for their village. It is revealed that what Benimaru is doing. The Orc general still doesn't understand what's happening, thinking that those who appeared are simply easy prey. Ranga steps forward, using his attack to create storms with lightning, wiping out almost everyone in the front. Due to using such great power, Ranga evolves again, becoming even stronger. Benimaru and the others use all their power. Benimaru uses his magic. Cheyenne demonstrates a brute strength that scares everyone, and Hakaru uses his sword skills at incredible speed. Rimuru, who is in the sky watching the battle, is amazed at how strong his members are. Meanwhile, Sui is fulfilling the mission of rescuing the Lizardman chief. As they escape from the prison, enemy orcs keep appearing, but Sui takes care of them instantly, which astonishes the Lizardmen and their chief. Gelmud, who is still somewhere in the forest, is very angry because his plans have been ruined. He is amazed at the strong monsters, and is also fearful, as he seemed to have a superior who ordered him to conquer the forest. Rimuru finally locates the Orc Lord and prepares for battle. But just then, something falls from the sky, which turns out to be Gelmud. With his anger, he reveals his plan to create a demon lord, injuring everyone present, especially Benimaru's people, as their village was used as a... Gabiru finally realizes he was only used as a pawn. Gelmud wants to command the Orc Lord, but it seems the Orc does not want to follow his orders. Gelmud, very agitated, decides to accelerate the Orc Lord's evolution by attacking Gabiru, but his soldiers save him. Gelmud then decides to attack again, but this time, Rimuru appears in the battle, stopping Gelmud's attack, saving Gabiru and his soldiers. Rimuru starts and captures Gelmud, who falls easily, showing that Imagine is not all that powerful. Gelmud is very scared of Rimuru's strength, so he asks the Orc Lord to fight, but the Orc Lord simply wants him to devour him, starting the evolution into a demon lord. Geld, the Orc disaster, is born. Battle begins, and Benimaru's group is the first to attack. Cheyenne starts the attack to distract Geld, and Hakaru tries to defeat him, but Geld's regeneration ability makes him a troublesome enemy. Sui also joins the fight and traps him in a cocoon of thread, while Benimaru prepares his magic and gets him inside. Ranga also helps using all the power he has left. Rimuru realizes he has spent all this power and asks Ranga to rest. After all the attacks, they realize they only scratched him. An orc offers to be eaten by Geld, and he begins to heal, becoming stronger in the process. Everyone wants to continue attacking, but Rimuru will take care of it. Rimuru seems to have a hidden trick, which is to put the system in attack mode, using all of Rimuru's potential, including sword attacks with his black fire magic, which prevents regeneration. However, Geld manages to heal himself and starts fighting back, managing to capture Rimuru and is about to for him. The system wants to counterattack, but Rimuru wants to handle it personally. He uses his Predator ability to Geld completely, but Geld also decides to him, turning the battle into a speed contest. In one of Geld's memories, we see that he was only seeking the salvation of his people, who were suffering from famine. Gelmud named him, and the ability he acquired was used to save his people, but it was all a lie. Still, he cannot give up, as he has come too far to fall, and cannot leave his people alone. Rimuru promises him that everything will be okay, as he will ensure that his people do not suffer the consequences of his actions. Thus, Geld is defeated. The battle has ended, and Rimuru is the victor. With the orcs defeated, Rimuru asked Benimaru and his companions about the promise he made, as their vengeance has been fulfilled. However, Benimaru and the others request to be subordinates from now on and forever, so Rimuru accepts them once again. A meeting is taking place with representatives of the races that participated in the battle present, with Rimuru at the head. Rimuru begins the meeting by clarifying that the orcs will not face consequences for their actions, as the famine of their people could have happened to any race, and everyone would have done the same. However, the Lizardmen are not satisfied. Benimaru steps forward, clarifying that survival of the fittest is something all monsters must be prepared for. These words calm everyone, as Rimuru is the strongest. However, Rimuru still does not know what to do with the orcs, as there are hundreds of thousands of them. He proposes a coalition among all the races of the Great Forest of Jura to create a nation that functions as a society. The Ogres are very grateful, as they are a despised race. The Lizardmen also want to be part of the coalition, and Trini also wishes to join, promising that the forest will help. The meeting ends with the request that Rimuru be the leader of the coalition, to which everyone agrees. On the way out, the current leader of the Orcs apologizes to Benimaru and the others for destroying their village, asking only to be and that the others be forgiven. Rimuru gave specific positions to each member, and Benimaru is Rimuru's general. He mentions that he will lead warriors and cannot kill one, thus forgiving him. As the leader of the Great Forest of Jura coalition, Rimuru names the current Orc chief Geld after his father. But it doesn't end there, he also must name the other thousands of Orcs. Additionally, he gives a name to the Lizardman chief, calling him Gabiru. Gabiru, on the other hand, is exiled from the Lizardman by Gabiru. Gabiru is surprised, as the norm would be execution. At his departure, he receives his father's realizing he receives some form of forgiveness. As he walks away, he encounters the men who always followed him, and they decide to follow him into exile. In a castle, we learn that Demon Lord Clayman was behind the attack on the Jura forest, and Laplace, who seems to be more than a fool, is also involved. In the village, the Orcs learn very quickly and advance rapidly, evolving into High Orcs. They build roads, aqueducts, and houses. However, Sui appears and warns of an emergency. In the sky, hundreds of knights mounted on Pegasus are seen, led by the king of Dwargon, who knows everything that has happened in the forest thanks to the spy he placed to follow Rimuru. Everyone in the village is scared by their appearance and unsure of their intentions, so they prepare for whatever may come. King Gezel lands in the village, and Kajin, who so respects him as his king, receives him. Rimuru also makes his presence known, introducing himself as the leader of all. This seems to displease Gezel, who seems to want to fight to verify Rimuru's power. Rimuru accepts, as it is better than total. The combat is about to begin, but just then, Trainee appears to witness and arbitrate the fight. Trainee's appearance surprises Gezel, but he still wants to test Rimuru's power. The fight starts with Rimuru attacking, but Gezel is no ordinary opponent, as he is an expert swordsman. He begins to counterattack and finally uses a technique that catches Rimuru by surprise. However, Rimuru manages to defend himself. Trainee stops the fight, as Gezel had stated that he only needed to defend against his attacks for Rimuru to win. Additionally, we learn that Gezel's techniques were taught by Hakura, who is currently also training Rimuru and several others in the village. Later that night, Rimuru and Gezel talk more comfortably, and Gezel requests to make a treaty with Rimuru, as he understands Rimuru's potential as a leader and his abilities. Rimuru is not sure, as making a treaty with monsters is not well seen, and it would be the same as considering them a nation. However, Gezel does not care. With this said, Rimuru accepts, but before signing, he must name his nation, calling it the Jura Tempest Federation, with the central city being the village called Rimuru. Everyone is very pleased with the names, and the treaty between leaders is formed. With the treaty signed, Gezel returns to the village after a few days, bringing a gift, which is Vesta. Vesta was exiled from Dwargon, so Gezel prefers him to be useful in a new place with his various knowledge. Kajin wants to have him, as his knowledge is very useful, so he asks Rimuru to accept him, which Rimuru does, as Kajin will have him under his care. Additionally, we see that Gabiru, who was also expelled, is in the village with his men, asking to be under Rimuru's service. As an extra, Abiru's daughter was sent to the village to gain experience in various fields. Rimuru accepts them all, and the village grows more and more. But before continuing, he decides to name Abiru's daughter and her companions, giving the names Soka to Abiru's daughter and Toka, Seka, Nanso, and Hokuso to the others. Also, accidentally, Rimuru names Gabiru with his same name, and consequently, he had to name Gabiru's men as well. These naming cause everyone to evolve into Dragonutes. Rimuru creates a team with Soka's group to be under Sui's command, and with Gabiru's group, Rimuru sends them to cultivate medicinal herbs in Veldora's cave. Finally, Vesta has a special room in the cave to conduct his research and create more potions. Clayman has a meeting with other beings named Karion and Frey. There is another who seems excited to go against Rimuru and is the first to venture into the forest to find him. Rimuru senses this person approaching and heads to a place where he won't be able to harm anyone. This person turns out to be the Demon Lord Milim Nava, a Dragonoid who came to verify Rimuru's power. Rimuru doesn't understand her true intentions and asks why she has come. She mentions that she only came to introduce herself, but just then Cheyenne arrives and attacks Milim, and Ranga tries to keep Rimuru away from the fight. However, Cheyenne is no match for Milim, who sends her flying. Sui and Benimaru also arrive and launch a joint attack, but this only amuses Milim. Rimuru returns to confront Milim, as that seems to be why she came. Rimuru realizes that Milim is much more powerful than him, so he decides to use a trick, giving her honey and tempting her to surrender, which works, as Milim surrenders, promising not to harm anyone in the village. In the village, Milim is enjoying the honey Rimuru gave her, and she offers to make Rimuru a demon lord, but he refuses, as it would bring too many problems. We learn that Milim is a somewhat childish demon lord who is only interested in fun things. Rimuru tells her that he doesn't want to be a demon lord because he has other things that he finds more enjoyable. Rimuru bids farewell to Milim, but she is very curious about how Rimuru has fun and throws a tantrum. Rimuru agrees to show her, but on the condition that she doesn't cause any trouble. Just then, Gabiru arrives and calls her short, and she sends him flying with a single blow. Rimuru asks her not to do that in the city for anything she doesn't like, and reluctantly, she agrees. Rimuru officially introduces Milim to everyone, and they are astonished as Milim seems to have a reputation for being very strong and feared. To further lighten the mood, Milim clarifies that from now on, she will live in the village, surprising Rimuru and delighting everyone with the addition of a powerful ally. After a bath, the male members gather to give their opinions on the addition of Milim to the city. They realize that if the influence of a demon lord increases, the others will not remain idle. However, they stop worrying because if Rimuru accepted her in the city, he will take care of it in some way, as the leader he is. The representatives of Bloomin are concerned about everything that has happened in the Jura forest and realize how powerful Rimuru is. They must decide whether to be friends or enemies with them. For this reason, the leader of the Adventurers Guild will personally go to see Rimuru, and he takes with him the trio of adventurers we already know. In Vesta's laboratory, he reports that he has already explained the recent events to King Gazel. Kijit and Gabiru are also there, as they must report on the progress of their achievements and research. Vesta starts with the achievement that he was finally able to replicate, with manual techniques, the potion that Rimuru creates. Rimuru confirms that it is the same potion he creates which delights everyone, as they will be able to make potions in bulk and it will be a good product for trading. But Cajun is not sure because selling it to the general public would be a waste. This type of potion should only be used in life or situations. Vesta thinks the same and suggests talking to King Gazel to create common potions in Rimuru City. Rimuru also thinks it's a good idea and orders negotiations to begin. At the exit of the cave, there is an in the distance. Rimuru hurries to get there and sees a crowd of people. We learn that some unknown individuals caused trouble and Milim took care of them. The unknown individuals are men of Demon Lord Karion who attacked Rigur. Milim, upon seeing this, defeated the attacker with a single blow. But Rimuru doesn't seem so happy about what Milim did, so he scolds her. After all the commotion, Rimuru tries to have a meeting with Karion's men, but they seem to be just arrogant guys who think that just because Rimuru is a slime, he is weak. We learn that everything we have seen of the forest and everything Rimuru rules over is just a quarter of the total Jura forest. The Karion representative explains that he is there on orders from his master to investigate the strong monsters that are appearing. With that said, Rimuru sets them free, clarifying that if Karion wants to speak with him, he can set a date and place. Somehow, Rimuru knows there will be trouble with Karion, so he asks Milim to give him information about him. Milim refuses as there seems to be a rule among the demon lords, but Rimuru convinces her somehow with kind words and promising to give her a gift. Milim explains that the plan to create a demon lord was a plan of the 4 demon lords, Milim, Karion, Frey, and Clayman. According to Milim, it was just out of boredom, but since Rimuru and his people interfered with the demon lord's plans, this may bring consequences. However, people trust that Rimuru will take care of it in some way. In the kingdom of Falmouth, which specializes in commerce, a group is sent to investigate the Orc Lord. This group is led by someone named Yoon, but along the way they sense the presence of a monster following the adventurers from Bloomend, so everyone present must start the fight since the monster seems to be strong. We see that the adventurers are very experienced. When they are about to attack, Gobda appears, who is hunting with few others. He decides to take care of the monster because they will eat that monster. Somehow, all the adventurers arrive at the village and gather in the meeting room. Rimuru introduces himself and clarifies that he does not want to have problems with humans because he wants to trade with them, affirming that the Dwarf Kingdom is their ally. The adventurers are somewhat incredulous, but Vesta arrives to confirm the alliance. Fuse, the representative of Bloomin, has no problem with trade, but he needs more proof that the treaty is real. Rimuru has no objections to this, so he allows them to stay in the village for a while. Rimuru thinks of a clever plan regarding the situation with the Orc Lord, so he makes a deal with Yum. Rimuru will pay them to take credit for the defeat of the Orc Lord and that they were only helpers in the victory. Rimuru wants this story to be spread so that people will think that the monsters in the village are good and trustworthy. Yum thinks about it for a long time and agrees to this story. He also wishes to serve Rimuru. But to make the story believable, Hakaru starts training Yum and his men. Clayman seems to have another ally named Tyr. Clayman requests that she investigate Rimuru and his company because by attracting Milim, things have become complicated. But before that, he gives a report on the previous investigations they asked for, stating that the demon Lord Frey has no interest in meddling with the Jura forest, as she seems to be waiting for being called Charybdis, which even scares Clayman. With this information, they decide to change plans. So Tyr must investigate the resurrection of Charybdis and verify if they can use it in their plans. Karion's men are lamenting over the things that happened because by wanting to rule over them, they lost the opportunity to make diplomatic relations with them. They realize that the city they built is not just anything, but Phobio, who was hit by Milim, is angry because that humiliation damaged his pride. One of the members clarifies that revenge is impossible, but just then, someone dressed as a clown arrives. We realize that those who dress as clowns are from an organization called the Moderate Harlequin Alliance. The stranger introduces himself as Footman, accompanied by Tyr. They offer Phobio the power to defeat Milim and clarify that the only way to defeat a demon lord is by becoming a demon lord. Everyone is incredulous, but Footman explains that they have a way to take Charybdis power. Phobio is convinced upon hearing the name Charybdis and the desire for more power. With the deal made, Phobio orders his men to retreat to follow Footman and Tyr. Furthermore, he orders to inform Karion about the events. In the village's springs, Fuse seems to have settled in too well in the village, so Rimuru asks if they can start doing business between the territories. But he must return to Blumen to start that. Changing the subject, he informs that Yum and his men have already set off to spread the story that they defeated the Orc Lord and Rimuru's village only helped. At the end of the bath, Rimuru wants to build a road to Blumen, to which Fuse agrees. But for the road, he will need materials. When the road is finished, Rimuru wants to meet someone who knows about commerce to sell their products to various places. Phobio and the other two have reached Charybdis Seal. Footman explains that the most feasible way to bring Charybdis is by merging it with Phobio. Phobio doubts upon hearing the way to obtain the power, but Footman and Tyr manage to convince him to enter the seal. In the village, Milim returns with the adventurers from Blumen after a successful hunt. But before celebrating the arrival of food, they sense a somewhat different presence, which turns out to be a dryad named Traya, who is Trini's sister. She arrives to warn about the resurrection of Charybdis, which is heading towards the village. To make things worse, Charybdis is a flying creature. Rimuru calls for an emergency meeting. Triad explains the situation and the history of Charybdis, who is Veldora's son, created with his magic. Rimuru realizes that Charybdis may be looking for him due to the alliance with Veldora or because Veldora is inside him. Members who know more about the topic explain that Charybdis can summon minions, of which he now has 13. Rimuru is worried about the situation, so Milim offers to fight Charybdis. However, Cheyenne and Shuna clarify that the city will be protected only by Rimuru and the city's members. Rimuru orders preparations for the battle to begin. Fuse thinks that the best thing to do would be to escape, but Rimuru cannot abandon his people and the home they have built. Fuse jokes that this is the mentality of a human, so Rimuru clarifies that in his previous life, he was human and reincarnated as a slime, surprising Fuse with the change in appearance. The preparations are ready. Benimaru's group, Gobda, and the Goblin riders, the High Orcs, Gabiru and his men, and finally the reinforcements sent by King Gazel, commanded by Dorf. The battle begins with everyone attacking the minions. One is defeated by Benimaru, another by the High Orcs and Gabiru, who also defeats a third one. With the fall of the minions, it becomes a free-for-all battle to finish quickly, as they need to save energy for Charybdis. Rimuru watches the progress of the battle from afar, but Milim appears, one to fight as well. Rimuru denies her, so she remains only as a spectator. In the midst of the battle, several members show improvements in combat, like Ranga, who learned to fly, and Cheyenne, who also improved her strength. Finally, all the minions have fallen, leaving only Charybdis. Everyone sends attacks as they can, but they do not affect Charybdis. It retaliates by launching its scales to attack everyone. This attack is so large and uncountable that it breaks through everyone's defenses. Nevertheless, no one gives up and decides to advance through the attack. Rimuru stops them to take charge and first devours Charybdis' annoying scales. However, Charybdis can create more scales. Rimuru orders everyone to retreat and prepare to attack when ordered. Rimuru launches an attack using his black lightning, but Charybdis is a formidable enemy due to all the powerful abilities it has. Benimaru orders the forces to attack from a distance, but after many hours of combat, they have barely damaged less than half of Charybdis. Rimuru is unsure what to do, but he hears Charybdis whimpering, mentioning Milim. Thanks to the system, Rimuru realizes that Charybdis' true target was always Milim. Milim discovers that Phobio is inside Charybdis. Rimuru sends her to fight, but asks her not to kill Phobio. Charybdis attacks Milim, but she is much more powerful. Milim stops Charybdis' scales and defeats him with just one ability. Rimuru manages to save Phobio by devouring Charybdis' core, which was attached to his body. Dwarf appears, curious about how Charybdis was defeated. Rimuru explains that Milim is a demon lord, but Dwarf doesn't believe it and misunderstands that Rimuru has a secret. Dwarf thanks Rimuru greatly for defeating Charybdis, as if it had not been stopped, it would have been a danger to all kingdoms and races. Phobio wakes up and can only apologize for everything that happened. The Dryad sisters appear and want an explanation about Charybdis' appearance. Phobio explains that the Harlequin's footman and Tyr gave the order. Bedamaru seems to recognize footman, and Gabiru clarifies that Laplace is also a Harlequin. Milim explains that the only one who can have such troublesome contacts and plans is Demon Lord Clayman. Rimuru decides to forgive and release Phobio, since he does not want to kill anyone, and Milim also does not want to cause more problems. Additionally, she notices Karion's presence, so he appears before Rimuru. The first thing he does is hit Phobio and then apologize for his subordinate's actions, promising that if Rimuru needs anything, he can count on him. Rimuru takes advantage of this to propose a non-aggression pact between their territories, which Karion accepts. In the village, everyone celebrates the victory of the battle, but Milim must leave the village as she has duties as a demon lord. She promises to warn the other demon lords not to mess with Rimuru's city. While everyone sleeps, Rimuru remembers a memory of Shizu, which is to protect the children from another world who are in the capital of the kingdom of Ingrassia. Rimuru checks that everything in the city is fine and goes smoothly, so he gathers everyone and explains that he will leave for a while, and the only one who will accompany him will be Ranga. Rimuru arrives in the kingdom of Ingrassia but asks Ranga to hide, as a monster in the city may cause problems. Rimuru passes without problems thanks to Shizu's mask, which hides his power and the papers that Fuse gave him. Rimuru is somewhat lost in the city and amazed by its advancements, but he somehow finds his way to a free union headquarters, which deals with adventurers. Thanks to the papers Fuse gave him, Rimuru is treated as a VIP. Finally, we meet the master of the headquarters, whose name is Yuki Kagurazaka, a student of Shizu. However, he realizes that the mask is Shizu's, and when he sees Rimuru's face, he attacks him as it is his teacher's face. Rimuru calms him with some words that he only told to Shizu. Somehow, they both connect over their Otaku interests, and Rimuru even does him the favor of printing the manga he has read using the system. But Yuki is the boss, so he gets back to the point and asks Rimuru the reason for his visit. Rimuru explains that he returned for Shizu's last wishes. Yuki understands and decides to support Rimuru in fulfilling those wishes. Thanks to Yuki, Rimuru becomes a teacher at the academy where Shizu taught, and he will teach the children who are under Shizu's care. Yuki gives him a tour of the academy's facilities and mentions one of Shizu's students, named Hinata Sakaguchi, who at a young age surpassed Shizu's power. Yuki explains that when someone is summoned at a very young age, the power they receive continues to grow as they have not reached maturity, and when the power is too great for the body to handle, the summoned person from their own power. Understanding that Shizu's students will have that fate, Rimuru seems to have an idea of how to save them and says he will try. Rimuru wants to introduce himself in the classroom but is greeted by a magical attack, realizing that the children are basically walking dangers. We meet Kenya, Ryota, Gale, Alice, and Chloe. The children do not accept Rimuru as their teacher and do not even listen to him, so Rimuru summons Ranga to make things easier. As the first thing, they will have a test, but not a written one, a physical test in which they will have to fight against Rimuru. Kenya is the first to want to fight, but all the attacks he sends are dodged by Rimuru. Thanks to this combat, Rimuru realizes Kenya's deficiencies. Chloe is next. She starts using water magic, which surprises Rimuru since using it at such a young age is not a small thing, but Rimuru simply goes through the magic. Next is Gale, who can also use magic, but Rimuru easily defeats him. Ryota follows. He has physical abilities like the Berserker mode, but Rimuru just dodges since he is carried away by his anger and does not think at all. Finally is Alice's turn, who seems to be a Golem master, which Rimuru rates as the strongest ability since the Golem can be improved infinitely, but for now, she can only control simple plush toys. Rimuru notes that even though they have used their abilities, the power in their bodies has not decreased, and he thinks about using the degenerate ability, but the system clarifies that the power of the children is linked to their souls, so Rimuru must continue looking for another way to save them, and also promises the children that he will save them since Shizu entrusted it to him. The children, upon hearing and seeing their teacher's mask, begin to trust Rimuru. Remembering the story of Ifrit and Shizu, Rimuru has the idea that each child should join with this spirit, and in this way they can grow normally as Shizu did. Using a portal that Vesta taught him to use, Rimuru goes to training to consult if his plan can work and to indicate where he can find spirits just as strong as Ifrit. She indicates the place, but she does not know the way since the entrance of the previous Queen of the Spirits has vanished and only those who serve the current Queen know the way. It has been a month since Rimuru became a teacher, and the children get along very well with him. Rimuru takes them on a picnic since not everything is about studying, who also have to rest, but just after training a bit with the children, Rimuru and Rhonda feel that something with great power is approaching, which is a sky dragon heading towards Ingrassia. Rimuru has no choice but to stop it since it may harm civilians. He orders Ranga to stay and watch over the children. Rimuru heads towards the dragon but decides to change his appearance a bit and not cause inconvenience with his identity as a teacher. The dragon is already wreaking havoc in the city, but just as it is about to attack some people, Rimuru arrives to stop its attack and devours it instantly. In Yuki's office, he hands him an invitation from a merchant named Joel Meyer and also tells him that the children can also go. Yuki clarifies that he already knows about the dragon situation, but Rimuru denies any connection. Still, he accepts the merchant's invitation. At the merchant store, the children enjoy a luxurious dinner while Rimuru and Joel Meyer have a separate table. But Joel Meyer clarifies that he already knows who Rimuru really is, and Rimuru takes the opportunity to ask him to visit his city to do business. The dinner is over and Rimuru gives the merchant a permit to do business in his city. But just then, a hostess dismisses the children using the name of the Spirit Queen. Rimuru listens to this and immediately asks her to indicate where the queen is located. The Erg Natural Park, that is where Rimuru and the children must head. Rimuru and the children manage to reach the abode of the spirits. The children are fearful, but they enter nonetheless. Along the way, they all hear voices in the distance. Rimuru asks for directions to the higher spirits, and the voices show them a path where they find something resembling a golem. According to the voices, it is necessary to defeat the golem to prove they are worthy of entering the realm of the spirits. Rimuru leaves the children with Ranga and advances to fight the golem. The golem launches the first attack, but Rimuru manages to dodge it. The golem's blows are fast but not seriously challenging. After some thought, Rimuru traps it with his threads and turns it to ashes with his black flames. Rimuru forces the voice, which turns out to be a small fairy named Ramiris, out of hiding. Ramiris also happens to be a demon lord, but no one believes her at first glance, since she seems very weak compared to Milim. Ramiris knows Milim and explains that demon lords do not obtain that title solely for being strong. Ramiris recognizes Rimuru since Milim told her about the slime that became the leader of the Jura forest. The children are surprised to see Rimuru's true form. Rimuru takes a break to relax the children, but instead of resting, Ramiris only reproaches him for destroying her golem, which was made from spirits using knowledge of spirit engineering. Rimuru is interested in what she said since it sounds very similar to what the dwarves and elves wanted to create. Ramiris confirms that she made the golem using the bases of the experiments that the other races left behind. With everything clear, Rimuru asks for help to save the children, and in return, he will help her make a new golem. Rimuru asks to be introduced to the Queen of the Spirits, but it turns out that Ramiris is the Queen of the Spirits. Rimuru does not believe it since a demon lord cannot be the Queen of the Spirits. Ramiris explains that she fell into temptation for some things, and we also learn that she knows the demon lord Leon. It turns out that Leon was a hero, and that he too became corrupted by something he wanted to do. Ramiris keeps her promise and helps Rimuru to summon strong spirits. She guides Rimuru and the children. Ramiris explains to Rimuru and the children that the higher spirits have their own wills, and they must choose their summoners. But if they are not chosen, they can create a new spirit with their own magic. The children are ready to call their spirits. Gale is the first to go, but it seems that he can only call lesser spirits. Rimuru tries to unite them to create a higher spirit, and the unification is a success, creating an earth spirit that joins Gale's body. Next is Alice. Rimuru performs the same process of uniting them, creating a space spirit that also joins Alice. Kenya is next, and although he starts to pray, a superior light spirit appears, which Ramiris knows. This spirit is somewhat extroverted and seems to have sensed Kenya's potential, indicating that he could be a hero in the future. Ryota can only call lesser spirits of different elements, but Rimuru unites them and creates a water and wind spirit. Finally, it is Chloe's turn, but when she begins to pray, Rimuru and Ramiris sense immense power being invoked. Chloe summoned a spirit with a physical body. Veldora, inside Rimuru, resonates upon seeing the spirit, revealing that Veldora and the spirit are acquainted. Ramiris wants to stop the spirit since it is dangerous, but Rimuru does not understand what she means. While they argue, the spirit enters Chloe's body. Ramiris explains that it was not a spirit in itself. It was a soul with immense power that appeared to be reborn in the future. Basically, when Klo has offspring, that spirit will be reborn with all the power from his previous life. Rimuru confirms to all the children that they are now safe, fulfilling one of Shizu's wishes. But it seems that things do not end well, as Rimuru must fulfill the promise to give Ramirez a golem. Rimuru creates the foundations of a humanoid golem, and to expedite the work he summons a demon, but it seems that it did not go well. Returning to the main story, Rimuru explains to Yuki that the children will now be able to live a normal life. He also assures him that he will do everything in his power to ensure their well-being. As a parting gift, Rimuru gives him the other volumes of the manga he wanted. In the academy, Rimuru remembers all his adventures. In an unknown location, a mysterious being awaits to meet Rimuru. Rimuru has to leave the kingdom of Ingrassia. He bids farewell to the children and to Yuki, asking him to take care of them. The children are reluctant to let him go, so Rimuru gives each child a uniform as a parting gift to lift their spirits, and also leaves Shizu's mask with them. Rimuru returns to the city of Rimuru, and on the way someone follows them, but Rimuru does not seem to notice. At some point in the story, we see that the man observing Rimuru from an unknown place is summoned by a human seeking revenge, but we do not yet know against whom. In the kingdom of Filtwood, Shizu was summoned to defeat a demon that had appeared. In the grand hall of the castle, several adventurers from different places have gathered. Some of Shizu's acquaintances warn her that the job is dangerous, as several adventurers have trying to complete it. The kingdom's minister arrives to announce that the kingdom's heroes have, which surprises the adventurers, as these heroes were very strong. He clarifies that the demon that was summoned seems to be a very ancient one, with legends speaking of it. The minister requests that they defeat the demon, but most of the adventurers know that it would be and decide to withdraw, but they are stopped by the soldiers at the door. Finally, the minister clarifies that the demon has an objective, and that they know what it is, stating that the demon wants to recover parts of his body that were buried deep within the castle, and with these parts, it can complete its physical form in the world. Shizu, on the other hand, asks the most important question, since the demon seems to have defeated two heroes and is very ancient. Surely they have names, which worries everyone because, like monsters, named demons are very powerful. The minister denies that it has a name, but Shizu does not trust his word. However, some adventurers want to leave and do not want to fight. But in the middle of the door, an adventurer is, which alarms everyone. Just then, a lesser demon emerges from the body, which is defeated instantly. The soldiers clarify that demons can be anywhere and in anybody's body, which scares the other adventurers, who begin to distrust each other. But in the middle of the room, someone begins to stand out. We realize that this individual is the demon who was summoned for revenge, but is now in hiding. He clarifies that the whole situation is a farce, and that the demons that appeared were summoned by the soldiers themselves. Furthermore, he indicates that his request is to avenge a demon that was summoned, but he does not know where it is hiding, so the fastest way is to kill everyone and destroy the entire kingdom. Shizu thinks that this is not the correct way to proceed and confronts him. The demon calls himself Kuro and demonstrates incredible power, launching a fire attack at Shizu. However, as we know, flames cannot harm her, so the combat becomes a close one in which both are evenly matched. To avoid prolonging the fight, Shizu decides to go all out, using her fire magic to the maximum. However, this does not do much damage to Kuro. Seeing this, Kuro has no choice but to retreat. In a hidden part of the castle, Shizu recalls that Leon taught her about the progenitor demons, and Kuro seems to be a progenitor demon Nor. However, she does not believe this, as such a powerful demon would not appear so easily. Shizu is summoned by the kingdom's king, but she begins to suspect something when the path leads them to the depths of the castle. We realize that the knight who was guiding Shizu was the king. We also learn that the king, the knight, and the minister are all involved in this situation. They clarify that they brought her to be... The knight introduces himself as Orthos, who appeared in the legends about the demon. Thus, we see that the demon had always existed on Earth for centuries. Shizu will not go down without a fight, so she prepares as best as she can and begins her attack. However, this does not harm him, as he turns out to be an Arctuman. Orthos is about to kill her, but just then, Kuro appears and all the demons in the castle. The only ones left are the minister and the king. Finally is Orthos' turn, whom Kuro grabs by the neck and destroys to the point where he cannot be reborn as a demon again. The kingdom of Filtwood adopts the story that Kuro all the authorities of the kingdom, and that Shizu managed to defeat the demon. Kuro wanted this to be the official story and promised that as long as this story remained, he would not attack anyone in the human kingdom. However, in the present, Kuro continued to follow Shizu's life and noticed Rimuru, who seemed to interest him. It turns out that the demon that Rimuru summoned will be Kuro, naming him Diablo. As the story progressed, many things were happening in Rimuru's stomach. One of them is when Rimuru Ifrit and encountered Veldora, who brought him into his own space willingly, but only did so to play with someone as he is always bored being trapped. Ifrit is compelled to play, but in the process he learns more about Veldora, and in the end, they become somewhat like friends. We find ourselves a little before Rimuru's farewell with the children. Rimuru announces that he will have to return to his city, to which the children seem unhappy about Rimuru leaving. However, he cheers them up by telling them that their final exams are approaching, which marks the change of schedule. Tis, a teacher from the institute whom the children get along with, arrives. Rimuru leaves the city and uses a new ability called spatial transfer, thanks to the space spirit he created for Alice. With this ability, he arrives at his city. In the city, Rimuru has to deal with diplomatic situations such as diplomatic exchanges with Demon Lord Karion and his nation, Urizania. To do this, a delegation was created with Benimaru as the representative and Rigur as his assistant. While Rimuru was practicing his imitation of objects, he was surprised by Cheyenne and Shuna, who brought elegant clothes for Rimuru to wear. However, he does not like any of them as they are too flashy, but the girls manage to make a perfect outfit. In the middle of the city, Rimuru appears dressed in a simple yet elegant manner and begins his speech to bid farewell to the diplomatic delegation, emphasizing the good things that have happened to the city and how they have overcome dangers together. With this said, he promises that the development and prosperity of the city will continue and that peace will endure. Benimaru and company leave amid celebration and good wishes, but not everything ends there, as Urizania has also sent its delegation and Rimuru must prepare to receive them. The members build a reception hall in the middle of the city with all the comforts that can be given to a guest, thanks to Vesta and Shuna, who take care of the kitchen and etiquette area. We also learn that Rimuru's visit to Dwargon will be soon, but while checking his schedule, Trini appears to inform that Urizania's delegation has entered Federation territory and will take a few days to arrive at the city. She also informs that the arrival of Yu and his men is also in a few days. In the forest, we see that Yu and his men have become very strong and they have fulfilled their mission of spreading the news throughout the kingdom. Rimuru continues his busy days, returning to the institute with the children, returning to his city to check on the progress of things until the day to receive Urizania's delegation arrives. Yu and his men have also arrived. Rimuru informs them of the things that have happened during his absence, and upon hearing Karion's name, they become scared. However, Rimuru calms them by explaining in detail how beneficial it can be to have a relationship with their nation, and warns them not to cause problems with Urizania's envoys. The day to receive Urizania's delegation has arrived. They demonstrate that they are a country that likes. The representative introduces herself as Albus, one of the three beasts of Karion. Another representative named Sufia, who is also one of the three beasts, turns out to be very arrogant and problematic. Rimuru becomes angry upon hearing how she and belittles his people, so he sends Yu to fight if she wants, but Yun thinks this will affect the negotiations. Rimuru tells him not to worry because they started with their words. Yum has to obey Rimuru's order, so he gets ready for battle, but Cheyenne steps forward to fight since she does not like the things Sufia said. Both get ready, and Sufia starts the attack, demonstrating incredible speed, but Cheyenne easily defends herself and begins her counterattack, using all her strength. Albus, on the other hand, orders Grucius, who is the third member of the three beasts, to face Yum. Yum realizes the fight you will have, so he starts with the first attack, but Grucius is very agile. Rimuru realizes that Yum and Grucius are almost equal in power. Cheyenne and Sufia continue fighting. Both seem to have very equal powers, but Cheyenne starts using an ability that even Rimuru is worried about her using. However, Albus stops the fight using her real form. Rimuru is surprised by her transformation and asks if it is enough. Albus clarifies that it is, as all this trouble was a test to consider the strong as their equals. Yum and Grucius recognize each other as strong individuals and end the fight peacefully. However, there is an inconvenience. Cheyenne has no way to stop her ability and she has no strength left. Everyone is terrified by the great energy that was created. Rimuru steps forward to receive the attack and devour it. Urizania's envoys, Yum and his men, are surprised by Rimuru's power. That night, a welcome party was held for the arrival of the delegates, who were surprised by the food and drink of the city. In the midst of the welcome, Albus and Sufia are drinking all the alcohol of the celebration. Rimuru is worried because it takes a while to make it since not many fruits grow around, but Albus suggests that they can bring fruits that grow abundantly in Urizania. Rimuru is glad about this, but seeing the expressions of the girls, he realizes he must give something in return, so he will send the made in the city. However, Rimuru doesn't think the exchange is equivalent, so he calls Kobe, a kobold merchant established in the city. Rimuru introduces him as the trade representative in the city, but he is very nervous in front of such powerful beings. Rimuru entrusts him with the shipment and transfer of trade between nations, leaving them alone to negotiate. A few days later, Albus and Sufia return to Urizania. Among the negotiations, the exchange of skills and technology was discussed. Some members of the delegation stay to exchange and learn various skills such as craftsmanship, blacksmithing, plumbing, tailoring, and other areas. Grucius also stays to help Rimuru by Phobio's order, so he joins the city's defenses. At the Institute, Rimuru checks that everything is fine without him, and Yume and his men leave again to gain more fame. Finally, Benimaru is back from his trip and shares the news, indicating that Karion himself trains his soldiers and that the infrastructure and technology are behind compared to Rimuru City. But they have something in which they are superior: agriculture. Rimuru is very interested in this area because if they develop this, several doors will open as a society. Additionally, Rimuru warns that he must prepare to go to the Dwarf Kingdom and leaves everything in the hands of his people. At the end of the meeting, Benimaru requests that Rigur be the captain of the observation team, as he wants to stay to take care of the Federation, and Karion is someone he trusts who would not mistreat his guests. Rimuru asks why he trusts Karion so much, and Benimaru clarifies that he confirms it with his fists. The fool that challenged a demon lord to a fight and lost, but he defeated Phobio, who was also very strong. Rimuru realizes that sending Benimaru as the captain of the delegation was very foolish. The next day, Rimuru heads to Dwargon, accompanied by Ranga, Cheyenne, Shuna, Gapta, and a few Goblin raiders. He also brings Keijin and the other dwarves from the village who wanted to see their old home. To respect etiquette, Rimuru brings gifts as a token of appreciation. On the way, they meet Geld, who is doing a great job creating roads to unify the kingdoms. As a reward for his effort, he gives them barrels of... They finally arrive at Dwargon, where they are greeted by Kaido, who is very happy to see them all. He asks for Rimuru, not knowing he has a human form now. Kaido is surprised by Rimuru's change and guides them through the city to reach the castle. Dorf welcomes them to the castle and leads them to King Gezel, but in the shadows, Clayman orders someone named Jura. In the meeting, Gezel explains that the reason Keijin and the other dwarves can enter is that he had absolved them of their exiles, admitting that he never wanted to exile them, but his ministers had him tied up. He is happy that his men are in a place where they can use their skills freely, adding that Vesta must be doing the same. The social chats have ended, so Gezel gets straight to the point, asking about the weapon used to defeat Charadis. Rimuru doesn't know what to say since he clarified that it wasn't a weapon, but the demon lord Milim. Dorf still doesn't believe that Milim is so powerful, but Gezel does, as with Rimuru, absurd things always happen. Just as they are about to continue talking, Shuna arrives with a gift for the king, something similar to... Dorf and Gezel try it and are amazed by the flavor. Rimuru mentions that thanks to bringing more fruits through trade routes, creating more will not be a problem. Gezel is surprised to learn that Rimuru's city is trading with someone else and is even more surprised to learn that it is the kingdom of Eurasania. However, they are also worried because Rimuru is amassing many contacts and power, which could upset other kingdoms like Falmouth. Still, Gezel thinks that problems will not arise yet. Rimuru is curious about Falmouth and wants to know more. Gezel explains that he has business with Falmouth for food supplies, but the king is very greedy, so he asks Rimuru to complete the treaty with Eurasania to trade with him only. However, Cheyenne interrupts the conversation as she is very drunk and falls asleep, but Gezel and Dorf find the situation amusing and advise Rimuru to be careful with her. The next day, the ceremony to declare friendship between Dwargon and Tempest is taking place, so Rimuru must give a speech to introduce himself and his people. He clarifies that his desire is to create a nation of peace where all races can live and support each other. After the ceremony, Gezel warns him that as a leader, he must be stronger and more reliable. He must demonstrate all of this with his words, since other kingdoms will feel that Rimuru and his people are not that great. With all the important things done, Rimuru has one more plan in mind, to go with the hostesses from the night before. Rimuru takes Gabda and his men to enjoy paradise, but in the establishment, they find Keijin and the other dwarves enjoying the situation. Kaido, who was invited by Rimuru, is also there. Gapta, on the other hand, seems to have had too much excitement and ends up. Rimuru, who is talking to the owner of the establishment, offers the drinks he brought as a gift for Gezel, asking her to see how much they can be sold for with her VIP clientele. The drinks and joy continue, but the night must end. Everyone returns as they can, but with great care, since Cheyenne and Shuna must not know what they did. However, they don't realize that Shuna is behind them. It turns out that Gabzo, the most innocent guy you've ever seen, had told Shuna everything. Even the dwarves, who were very drunk, realize the situation and try to escape, but Shuna doesn't let them go. With everyone terrified, Rimuru has no choice but to apologize to calm the girl's anger. But as punishment, he will have to eat Cheyenne's food for a week. In a city of another kingdom, we see that the person who is talking to Clayman is looking for Yu, who is passing through the city. She wants to join Yum's group as a mage, but he doesn't accept more members. However, Jura wants to buy the powers they have, so they start a fight, with her using magic in very innovative ways, easily defeating Yum. Seeing her great ability, he decides to accept her into his team. Rimuru returns to Ingratia to announce the results of the final exams to the children, giving them the good news that everyone passed and will continue together as classmates. Additionally, Rimuru announces that he will no longer be a teacher, as he has to return to the Federation, so he leaves the children in Tiss's hands. Yum, who has returned from his journey, introduces the Federation to Jura, whose true intentions are unknown. Yum introduces Jura to Cheyenne and Shuna, who welcome her. Jura is curious about the decorations of the city, and Shuna explains that it is a formal welcome for Rimuru, who returns from Ingratia. With the formalities done, Yum takes Jura on a tour of the city. They visit the blacksmith, the guest house, and the central market, where Jura realizes that everything she has seen is technology and military power, realizing that the Federation is a very powerful place to consider. Yum guides Jura to the training grounds where Hakuro is training everyone as usual. Grucius also suffers from the training. Yum introduces Jura to the guys and clarifies that she is the strongest in her group. Grucius doesn't believe that such a small woman can be so strong, so they make a bet and fight. However, the fight doesn't last long, with Jura's magic being too powerful. As a result, Grucius fulfills his promise, and Yum will be his leader from now on, joining his group. Gabta, who observed the fight, suggests using Jura's magic to defeat Hakuro, as they have all suffered from his infernal training. They decide to devise a plan to go against him. Hakuro accepts the challenge and starts his attack towards Gabta, but he quickly escapes and hits Gabta and his other two students for losing against that trick. Rimuru is at Mjolnir's restaurant with the children, who are also enjoying the manga they received for their good grades. Rimuru and Mjolnir talk about how well the options they create in the Federation are selling. Mjolnir adds that they can receive larger orders since a good product always becomes famous. Rimuru is happy with the news, as this will make his Federation more famous. Mjolnir also mentions Veriard, a baron from Blumen who is also benefiting from the Federation's trade, as they signed a security treaty. Although Rimuru doesn't like the idea, because if Blumen goes to war, he and his people will have to intervene. However, the difference in powers and who can support more is very clear. Rimuru is certain that no one will attack his people, but Mjolnir warns him that his nation will become the center of trade, which will not make many happy. Rimuru listens to this and remembers Dolph and Gazel's words, so he thinks a lot about the dangers that will come in the future. In the Kingdom of Falmouth, suspicions and problems arise. The main members of the kingdom have a meeting and clarify various issues, such as Yum and his group, who are now called heroes, about the Federation that is gradually becoming a successful trading point. This is what affects the Kingdom of Falmouth the most, since its economy is based on trade. One of those present suggests ending the problem, but another clarifies that the monsters in the city are very strong. Without knowing what to do, and with less than 20,000 soldiers, the Archbishop of the Western Church gives his opinion and a solution, promising that they will take care of the monsters, as they are a blasphemy to their god. However, they can't do anything, as the monsters are pacifists. The king, who also desires, clarifies that he will send his men to start a war, but they decide to send the summoned ones from another world that they have in Falmouth instead. As a final word, the Archbishop clarifies that he wants to test a secret of the church, which we still don't know about. One of the officials meets with the summoned ones and orders them to go to the Federation, giving them details about it. One of the summoned ones, named Shogo, seems upset to know that the forest is basically controlled by a slime. If we notice, he and the other two summoned ones are very arrogant and narrow-minded, but one of them, who acts calmly, seems to be the one who thinks the most of the group. Yum and Jura seem to be getting along better, but Jura can't do anything, as Clayman has her heart, making her a puppet in Clayman's plans. The preparations for Rimuru's welcome are almost ready. Jura gets along very well with everyone, but in the middle of her journey, she is summoned by Clayman to give her new orders. Jura thinks a lot about whether to follow them or not, but Clayman warns her that he can kill her at any time and also can kill Yum at any time. Jura is helpless, so she follows Clayman's orders. Sui alerts Benimaru about the arrival of several knights from Falmouth. Benimaru and the others fear that this might be a sign of aggression that could lead to war, so they decide to prepare and wait for Rimuru. However, they receive a call from Albus, who asks for help with her people as they need a place to take refuge. Irizania is preparing for war in a few days against the demon lord Milim, surprising everyone with Albus's declarations. The summoned individuals from Falmouth have arrived in the city and are causing a commotion. Carrara starts blaming and acting against one of Gabta's men, Gabzo. Then the other two follow suit, but Gabta arrives just in time to control the situation, knowing that Gabzo is not at fault. He clarifies that Gabzo likes Cheyenne, who has a great body, and compared to Karara, there's a big difference. This angers Karara, who uses her ability to order everyone to... But nothing happens as Shuna repels it. Cheyenne also arrives. Shuna politely asks them to leave, but Shogo and the third member seem unaware of who they are trying to fight against and step forward. However, Cheyenne gives them a final warning that fools do not heed. Cheyenne has no choice but to fight, so she goes with Shogo, and the other member of his group goes against Gabta. Jura receives an order to cast a large anti-magic seal over the entire city to cut off communications, but Grucius stops her as he finds several things suspicious about Jura. He realizes that she is a Majin and also that she works for Clayman, but Yoon arrives just in time to stop the fight between them that was about to happen. Yoon wants to know why Jura is doing these things and if she has problems. He wants to help her, but Jura doesn't want to receive his help as she is a Majin. However, this doesn't matter to Yoon, as he only knows that Jura is the woman he likes and is in love with. His words reach Jura deeply, as she also feels the same way, but she still refuses to accept his help. Yoon ignores her words and simply hugs her. Even with Yoon's words, Jura starts reciting the seal, causing magical interference in the city. Outside the city, the church is using its new, creating another barrier above Jura's seal. Benimaru and Shuna notice this but don't know what is really happening. Cheyenne continues fighting against Shogo, but in the middle of the fight, Cheyenne suddenly loses her strength. We then reach the part where Rimuru says goodbye to the children and gives them farewell gifts. On his way, Rimuru stops to use teleportation but feels that someone is nearby. The system warns him that a barrier has been placed, preventing him from escaping. Sui appears from the shadows, warning Rimuru to escape as the city is under attack. When he tries to call Ranga to check the situation in the city, Ranga doesn't respond, and the system warns him that another barrier has been placed, limiting his powers. Rimuru has a bad feeling, and just then, someone wearing the clothes of a holy knight appears. Rimuru realizes that this person is very strong and clarifies that Rimuru is his target, mentioning that Rimuru's city is a nuisance to the church. Rimuru understands that his city is under attack. In the city, everyone is very weak. Gabta is fighting as best as he can to protect Shuna and Gabzo. When he is about to be defeated, Hakuro arrives to take Gabta's place in the fight. He defends against the attacks with pure sword skill. Shuna explains to Gabta that one of the barriers weakens the power of monsters. Hakuro is overwhelmed and defeated, and Gabta also falls, leaving Shuna and Gabzo. Cheyenne is fighting against Shogo, and he surpasses her thanks to the barrier. However, Cheyenne won't go down without a fight. Fami's cavalry arrives, and their plan to make the monsters look like enemies has worked. Cheyenne tries to protect a girl, but is defeated. Finally, the city is and set on fire. Rimuru is worried about his city, but still wants to know why these things are happening. The knight introduces herself as Hinata Sakaguchi. Rimuru, upon hearing that name, wants to talk as she was Shizu's student, but Hinata doesn't listen and decides to attack, seeking revenge for Shizu. Rimuru dodges the blow and explains that it's all a misunderstanding, that he is also Japanese and a reincarnated person, and that he met Shizu and promised to find her. However, Hinata still doesn't listen. Hinata attacks continuously, but Rimuru defends himself as best he can since he is not a full power. Hinata's attacks are spiritual, and with a few hits she could Rimuru, putting him in a complicated situation. Rimuru decides to use all the strength he has, but he realizes that in his current form he can't defeat her. Just then, the system alerts that Ifrit has been completely consumed as a pure spirit by the degeneration ability. Rimuru seizes the opportunity to summon Ifrit to help him in battle, but Ifrit seems unable to do anything as Hinata has an ability that can steal the powers of others. Trying to steal Ifrit from Rimuru, Hinata's sword reaches his... Ultimately, Rimuru has lost his soul, and his body has transformed into something akin to a chimera. Hinata knows that since he doesn't have a soul, the only way to defeat him is by sealing him. However, this doesn't work. Hinata tries to use spirits to stop him and uses divine power as a final measure to destroy Rimuru. In some way, Rimuru survives, and we see that Rimuru's plan was to create a clone to escape the battle. Since Ranga can also be summoned, Rimuru wastes no time and heads to his city. However, due to the barriers, the city cannot be located by the system. The only solution is to teleport to a nearby location, arriving at the cave with Sui and his men, as well as Gabiru and his people. Sui, who is injured, is treated by Vesta. They are unaware of what is happening in the city since communications are cut off and the barrier prevents entry from the outside. They also clarify that the most obvious culprits are from the kingdom of Falmouth. Rimuru and those in the cave head to the city. The system analyzes the barriers and clarifies that both barriers weaken magic and the power of monsters. Rimuru orders Sui to locate the source of the external barrier, and he will enter to search for the source of the internal barrier. The city is in flames, but a few citizens have survived the and want to take him to a safe place. However, Rimuru hears the fight between Benimaru against Yume and Grucius, who are defending Jura. Just then, Rimuru arrives. Benimaru explains the situation, clarifying that the one who created the barrier was Majura. Yume and Grucius ask them to listen to Majura's situation, but she clarifies that she does not deserve forgiveness as her barrier caused many. Rimuru does not understand what she means, so she shows him. Rimuru notices all the destruction and spilled in the city and finds the bodies of several citizens. One of the survivors mentions that this was done by humans. Rimuru realizes that the first rule he gave created all this. Majura also speaks, clarifying that her barrier accelerated the of the citizens. Rimuru, upon hearing this, is about to kill her, but the system indicates that Majura's barrier was not the only cause of everyone's, indicating that the main culprit of everything is the external barrier, which Sui is investigating. Rimuru manages to calm down and holds a meeting with Majura to find out the cause of her actions. Majomo was also in the city and asks to be in the meeting to give his point of view on things. Rimuru is informed of all the things that have happened, and they also clarify that the bastards of Falmouth will return in a week with more soldiers. Benimaru also mentions that Hakuro has lost, but he also clarifies that the main members are only injured and are recovering. And Joel Mill also clarifies that Falmouth's attack was because the city was becoming a major commercial hub. Rimuru asks him to request help from Bloomund. It's Majura's turn, clarifying that she is Clayman's servant, making him an enemy of Rimuru. Majura explains that Clayman has the ability to control his servants as he pleases. Majura's mission was to investigate everything about the city and put up the barrier. She also indicates that Clayman has control over her because of his ability. Rimuru doesn't have time to decide what to do with her, so he will only keep her in custody. Rimuru asks to be taken to the wounded and Shuma is treating them. She indicates that potions don't work because the wounds were inflicted with spatial attributes. Rimuru cures them by devouring the spatial effect. After healing them, he asks about Shin. Benimaru indicates for him to follow, and at the end of the pile of bodies, Gobda finds Gobzo, and finally he finds Shagan, who protecting several children of the city, and Gobzo protecting Shuna. Rimuru momentarily loses control of his power, but regains it and asks to be left alone. The system warns that he cannot lose control of his power due to the injured monsters around, so he decides to use Shizu's mask, but he remembers that he gave it away. The system makes another one, and with that, he can grieve. Rimuru has many questions, trying to think about what he did wrong. He doesn't know how to feel, but still doesn't want to let them, so he looks for a resurrection spell, but the system cannot do that. As a last resort, he devours them so that their bodies are not left in the open. But just then, the adventurers arrive, giving Rimuru hope, telling him that there is a story about a resurrection spell. With this in mind, Rimuru decides to have hope again. Sui notifies that he has located the source of the external barrier but cannot attack because security is strong. Rimuru orders him to keep watch and keep him informed. Rimuru asks Eren to tell him about the spell, and she dissolves her formation, revealing that she is an alpha. The story is about a girl born of a dragon and a human. Her father, seeing her alone, created a friend for her in the form of a dragon. However, the king of a kingdom wanted to control the girl, so he killed her dragon friend. The girl was very angry, so she used the power inherited from her father to destroy the kingdom and became a demon lord. Somehow, her dragon friend was resurrected, but as his body had no soul, he was a creature without control. The girl had no choice but to seal her dragon friend. Rimuru realizes that if he revives them, he doesn't want them to be without a soul, but Eren indicates that due to the barriers, the spirits may be inside. The system confirms this theory, so Rimuru's mission now is to become a demon. Now, the adventurers who we always knew as humans turn out to have been elves all this time, and Eren is basically of elven royalty. Rimuru decides to create another barrier to further seal the souls of his people. The system warns that Rimuru can now unlock the Demon Lord class, but there are conditions. To evolve, he needs specific nutrients, and he must kill 10,000 humans. Just then, Sui reports that the army of the church in Falmouth is arriving with approximately 20,000 soldiers, which is perfect for Rimuru. In the guest house, Rimuru dictates Majura's sentence, but Yu and Grucius try to stop it, although it is useless as Majura seems to have accepted her fate. Rimuru traps them, so they can't move, but it turns out it was Rimuru's plan to just cut off her connection with Clayman. Majura did, but only for a few seconds, and Rimuru created an artificial heart for her to live, asking her in return to help bring everyone back to life. She responds that she will do everything possible to bring them back as she feels guilty for everyone's. She also orders Yu to do something for him, and he also accepts because he is grateful for saving Jura. Rimuru asks him to be the king of Falmouth. Rimuru clarifies that he will all forces of Falmouth and its leaders, so Falmouth will need a leader. With everything cleared up, Rimuru calls for a meeting among all. Rimuru indicates that he will become a demon lord and will use as a sacrifice 10,000 of Falmouth's men. He explains his whole past and clarifies that he is a reincarnated person, found a family with everyone, and will do whatever it takes to protect them and not lose them. He also laments leaving them unprotected, but Shuna asks him not to lament as it is their own fault for always expecting Rimuru to protect them. Benimaru also agrees and each member laments what happened, but Hakaru intervenes and clarifies that they were defeated by their own arrogance, which everyone agrees with. Rimuru concludes by stating that he will seek peace, but will use force against anyone who harms them. For this reason, he will become a demon lord. In the meeting, the members want to create an army to go against those who are coming to attack, but Rimuru stops them, stating that he must handle everything alone, so he will take care of the entire operation. Instead, he gives them another mission, to attack the camps protecting the pillars of the outer barrier. Rimuru creates 4 groups with a leader. Benimaru leads the first group, Hakaru, Rigur, Gapta, and Geld the second, and Gabiru and his people the third, and Sui and his group the last. Additionally, he instructs Shunan to create another barrier with Jura to keep the souls inside the city. With the plans made, the city prepares for the attack and the resurrection of the people. The attack on the barrier pillars begins, and Rimuru also prepares to the soldiers. The soldiers are camping, planning what they will do in the city, but Rimuru from the sky prepares their sentences. The first attack begins with Benimaru, everyone ashes and thus destroying a pillar. Gabiru and his men also start their aerial attack, destroying another pillar. Subi and his men also attack, destroying another pillar. Next is the camp where Falmouth's summoned individuals are, who are very proud to have defeated weakened monsters, but Hakaru's group arrives. Gabda and Rigur start the attack, followed by Geld using an area skill, ending the simple ants. The summoned bastards decide to fight, so Gel goes with Shogo and the other will fight Hakaru again. Hakaru, at his full power, does not intend to hold back, and knowing his enemy's ability, plays with him to break his arrogance and finally him. Geld continues fighting with Shogo, but Geld has a defensive style and Shogo an offensive one. Geld loses his defense, but he uses a corrosion ability, making Shogo beg for his life. However, Hakaru arrives and shows him his friend's head, and this scum runs cowardly to Kurara's camp to kill her and take her power, thus improving his defense. But this is nothing for Geld, who hits him with clean punches mixed with corrosion and finishes him off with a cut. However, Raisin from the Falmouth Kingdom arrives, who seems to be a very powerful magician, saving Shogo. Both want to escape, but Geld won't allow it, so he attacks. Hakaru orders him to stop, and in the middle of the way, a magic trap is activated, but he manages to dodge it. Raisin and Shogo want to escape again, but Hakaru indicates that it would be better not to, as Rimuru is heading to where they want to escape, clarifying that they have bothered the wrong person and will suffer the consequences. However, they still decide to escape. Hakaru did not fight because if he had, everyone would probably have. After this fight, Gapta destroys the last pillar, causing the barrier to weaken, and it is time for Shuna and Jura to create another barrier to seal the souls. Rimuru is notified about the destruction of the barrier, so it's showtime. The system has prepared a very powerful and large-scale spell, but on the other hand, Raisin and Shogo have reached the soldiers' camp. Shogo has plans for revenge, but Raisin does not. Instead, he destroys Shogo's spirit to take over his body, which has learned the skills. Raisin's plan is to transfer his mind to Shogo's body, explaining that Raisin has lived for generations. Rimuru establishes an anti-magic zone so that no one can escape, using water and light magic to create energy beams that pierce through the skulls and hearts of his enemies. Rimuru has activated the Megiddo spell, and the continue to rise uncontrollably. The Falmouth leaders in the camp don't know what to do, and even Raisin is too scared to act. Rimuru, seeing some soldiers hiding, descends and speaks with Raisin. However, Rimuru has no mercy left, so he kills him. The only ones left are the king and the archbishop, who regret attacking the city. Rimuru, however, reminds them that the one who forgives on the cross, not him. Nevertheless, Rimuru gives them the opportunity to speak, clarifying that in front of him, both are nothing. The king only spouts nonsense, so Rimuru one of his arms. In the midst of this, Rimuru creates a new ability called Merciless. If an enemy loses the will to fight in front of you, it's their death. The system also notifies Rimuru that they have just surpassed halfway in collecting the souls to become a demon lord. Rimuru decides to use Merciless and all the soldiers because of it, but he only leaves the king of Falmouth and the archbishop alive. Rimuru wants to take them as prisoners, but the evolution to Demon Lord has begun and cannot be stopped. Rimuru summons Ranga to take him to the city and orders that both be taken as prisoners. However, Ranga feels that someone else has survived, but there is no time to search for them. In the city, the system notifies everyone that Rimuru has begun his evolution, and when it is complete, gifts will be given to all his vassals. Benimaru orders everyone to be alert since they are close to recovering everyone. Ranga arrives with the prisoners and Rimuru. Shuna takes care of Rimuru and wraps him up to place him in the center of the city and start Rimuru's evolution. Rimuru has evolved into a demon slime, increasing all of Rimuru's statistics, enhancing all abilities and gaining new ones. Additionally, the system has evolved into Raphael, King of Knowledge, but sacrificing the Degeneration ability. The Predator ability has evolved into Beelzebub, but sacrificing the Merciless ability. In the soldiers' camp, Raisin is the one who has survived and the demons have found him. Raisin intends to fight, but his attacks are nothing for the demons, and even the superior spirit he summons is defeated in seconds. Raisin finally realizes he is no match, but Kuro wants to test the body that Rimuru summoned, so he decides to seal the magic around to use physical attacks. However, even with this advantage, Raisin is nothing against Kuro, and after a while he realizes that Kuro is a primordial. With this in mind, Raisin loses all will to fight and falls unconscious. In the city, everyone waits for Rimuru, and the system announces that Rimuru has completed his evolution. And now the distribution of gifts to his vassals begins. Everyone falls unconscious due to the strong connection with Rimuru, but Benimaru is still awake and observes that the system will take care of everything, so he also falls unconscious. The system uses Rimuru's power to gather all the magic and souls around and tries to revive them, but just then, the demons arrive. They realize that Rimuru's magic is not enough to revive everyone, so Kuro offers the two demons accompanying him as Rimuru does them, and the ritual begins using secret arts known only to the strongest. The ritual is completed and Rimuru has to rest due to exhaustion, but everyone has been revived. Rimuru wakes up in Cheyenne arms with everyone else waiting for his awakening, but he notices that everyone is somewhat different. The system clarifies that everyone has evolved alongside Rimuru. Benimaru informs him that during the 3 days Rimuru was asleep, a disaster occurred in Eurasania. Milim has declared on them, and as a demon lord, Karion cannot retract that declaration. Milim and Karion face off. Karion uses all his strength, even using his unique ability, but Milim dodges the attack and also uses her true form, deciding to unleash all her power. Karion dodges her attack but is ambushed by the demon lord Frey, and thus Eurasania falls. Thanks to Albus and Sufia, the citizens were evacuated and settled in Rimuru for the time being. Rimuru finds everything happening strangely, as Milim is not one to work in teams. Phobio indicates that Frey returned to Clayman's territory, making Clayman the suspect in all of this. Rimuru thinks Karion is still alive, so he needs to think about the plan to follow. Outside the city, Rimuru is unsure of what to do when Kuro appears. Rimuru doesn't recognize him, but Ranga reminds him that Kuro is the demon he summoned at the soldiers' camp. Rimuru thanks him and asks him to leave, but Kuro wants to serve Rimuru. After some hesitation, Rimuru accepts and gives him a name, Diablo, which causes him to evolve, increasing his power tenfold. Diablo notices Rimuru's concern and asks what he's thinking. Rimuru explains that he doesn't know how to solve the problems with the demon lords, what to do with the kingdom of Falmouth, and how to deal with the church. The system notifies him that Veldora will soon be freed, which will deter several enemies and kingdoms. With all this said, Rimuru seems to have a plan to solve all the problems, ordering Sui to gather information about Clayman and prepare a feast for the visitors. Rimuru returns to the place where he met Veldora, and the system informs him that Veldora's prison has been broken. Rimuru creates a clone of himself to contain Veldora and begins to absorb him. Veldora molds the Rimuru clone to his power, and thus Veldora Tempest, the storm dragon, awakens. With Veldora's awakening, it is revealed that for entertainment he watched Rimuru's memories, adopting many Japanese customs and otaku tastes. As Veldora is also linked to Rimuru, he also received a power boost and skill improvements from Rimuru's evolution. The system notifies him that thanks to Veldora's release, Rimuru obtained 2 more ultimate skills, Uriel, the King of Vows, and Veldora, the Storm King. In the outskirts of the cave, Rimuru asks Veldora to contain his aura as it would frighten the citizens. Veldora complies but uses Ki instead. In the city, everyone anxiously awaits Rimuru's return after sensing Veldora's resurgence. Rimuru arrives and presents Veldora to everyone, but no one believes him as Veldora is a dragon. Just then, Trini arrives and kneels before Veldora, showing respect, which convinces everyone they are indeed in the presence of Veldora, the dragon who always protected the Jura forest. Veldora explains that Rimuru is his sole friend, so he will support him in everything he does, which leads to celebration among the people as Rimuru and the city grow stronger. Shuna announces that the banquet is ready, so Rimuru begins the feast, delivering words of joy to all. However, not everything is joyous, as Rimuru and Benimaru must eat Cheyenne's food, which always seems poisonous. Cheyenne serves them the dishes, and to their surprise, the food is good. It's revealed that Cheyenne has acquired a unique ability called Master Chef, allowing her to safely prepare her food. Although they can safely finish Cheyenne's food, the appearance of the food still matters. The next day, Rimuru calls for a meeting with everyone and introduces Diablo, who will be his second assistant. Everyone accepts him due to his strength and usefulness during Rimuru's evolution. Gabiru is given a new position, and as a result, he will also participate in the leaders' meetings. With the basics settled, Rimuru clarifies that he will present himself to the world as a demon lord and declare war on Clayman. For this, he needs to take over the kingdom of Falmouth, contain the church, take care of the people of Eurazania, and rescue Karion. Rimuru orders negotiations with allied kingdoms for assistance, a review of the current strength of all city members, and interrogation of prisoners who will steal Falmouth's throne. Just as they are about to finish the plan, Fuse arrives, responding to the Treaty of Support between nations. He calms Rimuru, explaining that the war against Falmouth is over, which Rimuru initially doubts, but everyone else confirms it. From a distance, Rimuru senses more people approaching, who turn out to be King Gazel and several knights. Gazel congratulates Rimuru on his evolution, but another group approaches, led by someone named Errol. Errol, upon hearing Rimuru's name, accuses him of deceiving his daughter, but before he can cast a high-level magic spell, Aaron arrives and stops him. It is revealed that Errol is Aaron's father and a Duke of the Sarian magical dynasty. With their appearance, Gazel and Errol join Rimuru and his leaders meeting. In the Holy Empire of Riberios, Laplace is driven away and hunted by a vampire belonging to the church, further casting doubt on the church as vampires are considered monsters. Laplace survives and ends up in Yuki's office, who had requested information about the church. It is also revealed that Yuki is the one who provided information about Rimuru and his people. Yuki is a despicable traitorous rat. Additionally, it is revealed that Yuki had promised to bring someone back to life, the former demon lord Kazarim, now known as Kagari, the leader of the modern Harlequin Alliance in Clayman. However, Kagari does not yet have all her power as a demon lord. Laplace begins his report on the church and how a vampire defeated him. Kagari explains that the vampire is actually a demon lord named Valentine who is very powerful. With this information at hand, suspicions grow within the church. Laplace suggests summoning a Walpurgis where demon lords vote on matters concerning themselves to remove Valentine from Riberios. In Rimuru's city, the meeting takes place in a larger, more open area due to the number of people attending. They start by introducing the new members, the most important members of the Federation, and the guests, including Gazel Erold, representatives from Eurazania, representatives from Blumen, and finally, the future representatives of Falmouth. However, someone is missing, and that someone is Veldora. Everyone is scared when they hear his name, knowing the terror Veldora can unleash. Due to Veldora's appearance, they decide to pause the meeting again, as Rimuru needs to explain to Gazel and Erold how Veldora has appeared. Rimuru explains everything to both of them from the beginning, including how he reincarnated as a slime and how he was a human in his other world leading up to today. They both understand that everything that happened was essentially fate, and they don't know how to react to it. They realize that the biggest problem would be the church, which considers Veldora its greatest enemy. Rimuru knows that there will be consequences with Veldora and that they will have to fight the church at some point. Gazel and Errol decide to accept Rimuru's decision regarding Veldora and the church, so they decide to ally with him against the church. Errol explains that he prefers an alliance because he verified that the demon lord his son helped create is someone kind and trustworthy. However, there will be problems since 20,000 soldiers is not something so kind. Gazel indicates that the bodies were and there are no survivors, so the story can be changed to indicate that this never happened. Finally, with the alliance made, the previous meeting is resumed. Here, Rimuru explains that he fought against Hinata, whom Rimuru considers a cold and ruthless. However, the representatives of the nations clarify that they heard different information, indicating that Hinata always listens to all sides of the story to decide and always helps those in need. They suggest that perhaps due to the church's belief, she did not stop to listen to the explanation of a monster. Diablo interrupts, requesting to be sent to finish off Hinata, but Cheyenne also wants to be sent to fight. Just as Veldora is about to intervene because he also wants to fight, Rimuru silences them and clarifies that they will not attack anyone as that would make them belligerent people, and he still does not want to fight against the church. Rimuru thinks about who could have given information about him to Hinata, and the one that comes to mind is Yuki. The system confirms that he is the prime suspect, but Rimuru still doesn't know why he did it. Just as they are about to decide on the final plans, Demon Lord Ramirez arrives, warning about the fall of the city and the Federation. Ramirez tries to explain something, but Diablo grabs her and wants to crush her. But Rimuru stops him because even though it may not seem like it, Ramirez is a Demon Lord. No one believes this, or rather, no one is surprised anymore because Veldora's appearance was bigger news. Ramirez, upon hearing that Veldora has appeared, starts talking nonsense about him, but Rimuru grabs her and leaves her in the care of Veldora. Ramirez realizes that is Veldora and from the surprise. Rimuru's plan involves changing the facts of the war with Falmouth. Falmouth lost the war against Rimuru's city, and due to the many Veldora awakened again. Additionally, Rimuru will present himself as a Demon Lord. Rimuru and Yu managed to calm Veldora after much effort, reaching a deal with the dragon. This deal granted Rimuru the evolution to Demon Lord. Everyone accepts this story, especially Veldora, who wants to have fun and help Rimuru. Rimuru explains about the kingdom of Falmouth, where Yu will be the king. They plan to destroy the old kingdom and create a civil war. Since Yu is popular with the people, he will win and create a new kingdom. Everyone agrees with this plan. Errol asks Fuse if his kingdom is really okay with being allies of the monsters, as the church would easily destroy them. Fuse clarifies that initially he just wanted to be in a middle ground between the church and Rimuru, but his superiors preferred to trust the monsters even if it cost them their lives. Bloomin, being a small nation, must risk everything with one choice, and Fuse chose the same as his nation, to support Rimuru. Errol is satisfied with Fuse's answer, but still has one more question for Rimuru. He asks how he will decide to use his power as a Demon Lord. Rimuru is relieved as it's just a question and clarifies that all he wants is to create a world where it's easy to live, a world of peace and tranquility. For that reason, he obtained the power of a Demon Lord. With all this said, Sarian offers a treaty of alliance with Rimuru, adding a new nation to the alliance. Clayman plans to attack what remains of Eurazania, and with the remaining civilians, it will be enough to give him an awakening. Laplace, upon hearing Clayman's plan, thinks it is too hasty and volatile, suggesting it would be better to wait until after Walpurgis. Clayman clarifies that due to Jura's the plans can move faster because essentially Rimuru declared on Clayman and Karion was the one who motivated all this. We also learn that Milim is acting this way because she seems to be under Clayman's control or someone else's. Rimuru remembers that Ramirez had arrived and wanted to ask her why she came, but his eyes drift as he looks at the golem they helped create for Ramirez, named Beretta, with whom he talks for a while. He asks her what Ramirez wanted to talk about, so they force Ramirez to say it. Ramirez clarifies once again that Rimuru's city will fall, and it will be because Clayman is called a Walpurgis, the meaning of Demon Lords, and the topic of conversation will be about Rimuru's nation and its evolution to Demon Lord. Another topic of conversation will be Karion's betrayal of the Demon Lord's treaty by informing Rimuru that Jura was serving Clayman, and Rimuru killed her for that reason. Basically, Clayman wants to start a war with Rimuru by inventing lies against both Rimuru and Karion. Ramirez is very upset about what is going to happen, but Rimuru is very calm because Jura is there alive. Jura presents herself to Ramirez, and thus, Ramirez realizes that everything is Clayman's plan. However, Rimuru is worried about the actions of other Demon Lords, but Ramirez does not know about them as the decision is made at Walpurgis, which will be in 3 days. With all this, Ramirez decides to join Rimuru's side and unite her fairy kingdom with the city. During bath time, everyone relaxes and discusses some of the things they will do among the allied nations. Errol plans to connect his nation with a road, but Rimuru intends to charge tolls for its use and security. During dinner, Ramirez clarifies that she decided to live in Rimuru's city because she loved the treatment and the amenities there, although Rimuru refuses. However, Trainee and her sister ask Rimuru to accept her, as they will take care of Ramirez. Rimuru has no choice but to promise to think about it. In the middle of the meal, Rimuru asks Shine about the information she obtained from the prisoners, who were Shine clarifies that the king started the war out of greed for the city's products and out of fear of losing trade routes. They also indicate that in the church, the instigator of the war was Cardinal Nicholas Spurtus, who pushed for the war to gain glory for having destroyed a sea of monsters for God. Errold, Gazel, and Fuse decide to make things worse for the church. Lumen will spread rumors about the church, Dwargon will boost trade and the Federation's power, and Sarian will officially declare the alliance with Rimuru and his nation. With all this happening at the same time, the church will be powerless. Rimuru orders the plans for Yoon to become king to begin. Yoon will take the prisoners back to Falmouth, indicating that he has saved them, but they are unsure whether to release the survivor of them, who was Raisin. Everyone is astonished when they hear that name, as he is a former hero and a great mage on par with Errol. Cheyenne, however, does not believe that it is the same mage, as Raisin appears in a young body. The system informs Rimuru that there is magic to swap bodies, confirming that this Raisin is indeed the same one. Everyone is even more astonished, as Diablo easily captured Falmouth's most powerful mage. Rimuru decides to send Diablo as support for Yum to control Raisin. Regarding the war against Clayman, Sui indicates that he has an army of 30,000 located in Milim's lands and led by Yamza, one of the Five Fingers, the strongest members of Clayman. The others are Adalman, Ninehead, Perron, and the last one was Jura. However, the soldiers he is gathering are too few to attack the Federation. Benimaru realizes that Clayman's target is actually Irizania, even though the others do not understand why. The system warns that Clayman is doing this to have a true demon lord awakening by all the civilians remaining in Irizania. Clayman's army will arrive in Irizania in 2 days, which is not enough time to mobilize defenses against the attack. Rimuru knows there is a great possibility that Clayman will evolve, so he decides to help Irizania in any way they can. He orders Benimaru to start gathering soldiers, but they are unsure how to transport everyone before Clayman's army arrives. The system suggests that monsters can be easily teleported to Irizania and humans just need a new spell to be transported, which the system has already created. Rimuru indicates that he can use teleportation on everyone, but he is not sure if it will work. Everyone decides to trust Rimuru with the journey. At the end of dinner, Cheyenne suggests that it would be better to go to the Walpurgis, as Rimuru is now a demon lord. Ramirez clarifies that it is possible for her to go, but only with 2 companions. At the meeting, they will try to confront Clayman and find out why Milim is doing all these things. Rimuru decides to take Cheyenne and Ranga as companions, but Veldora also wants to go. Rimuru denies him, as he will stay to guard the city. Additionally, Rimuru wants to spread rumors of Veldora's return among the demon lords. If any problems arise, Rimuru can summon Veldora using his ability. Ramirez will also go, so she must take 2 companions. She requests training and also Beretta. In Milim City, we meet Midre and Herms, both servants of Milim, who are not happy about Clayman's men being there. However, Milim ordered them to stay, so they have no choice but to obey. Yamza arrives to thank them for the reception of the food, but also to ask for more and to equip them for soldiers. Herms clarifies that this cannot be possible, so Yamza Herms' arm. Herms is about to respond, but Midre knocks him out the blow and apologizes for the inconvenience and for Herms. Yamza accepts the apologies and leaves with the order to want more soldiers. Midre heals Herms, stating that they must wait for Milim to return to resolve things. Rimuru thinks that the war will affect the civilians of Irizania, so the system tells him that he can start bringing everyone using teleportation magic. Rimuru orders them to set up tents for the civilians and begins to transport everyone to his city with Phobio's help, successfully evacuating everyone. The day to go to war against Clayman has arrived. The soldiers of Irizania, the Goblin Raiders, the Elite Ogres, the Hobgoblins, the Orcs, the Dragonutes, all of them will go to war commanded by Benimaru, Gopta, Gabiru, Geld, and the representatives of Irizania. Those who will stay to guard the city will be an elite group called Yamagare, created by Cheyenne. Rimuru begins the massive teleportation of troops. With the troops sent, Gazel returned to his kingdom. Errol also returned to announce the alliance and Rimuru's news, and Yum and his group go to Falmouth to take the throne. But with Diablo in the group, it will be very easy. Yamza informs Clayman that there are no civilians in Irizania and also informs him that Veldora has returned, but according to rumors, Veldora is weak. With this information, Clayman underestimates Rimuru and begins to make plans to control Veldora. In the Kingdom of Frey, she remembers how Milim came to visit her to show her the gift Rimuru gave her. Taking advantage of this, Frey also gives her a necklace, which seems to be the cause of the mind control that Milim is under. Frey betrayed Milim so that Clayman could use her as a puppet. In an unknown kingdom, the demon lord Leah meets the demon lord called Guy Crimson. They seem to have known each other for a long time and converse. Guy explains that he called Leon to invite him to the Walpurgis, which is interesting because Milim was one of those who requested it, but it seems that she supports Clayman, which is very strange for Milim, who is a very free being. Liam and Guy conclude that they will both attend, but Guy asks about Rimuru. Liam knows about him but has no problem with him being called a demon lord. We also learn that Guy is as strong as Milim. They are both powerful monsters. Liam brings up the subject of Veldora, warning that he is already awakened. We also meet another of the 4 dragons, the ice dragon named Velzard. Veldora's awakening raises many questions, but the rumors spread by Rimuru and the others somehow work. Liam thinks that Veldora was freed by someone and disappeared because of someone's power. Guy is happy to hear that theory because it would mean that there is someone as strong as them, and Leon thinks that someone is Rimuru. Additionally, we learn that Leon was the one summoning children from another world. But with Rimuru's intervention, he can no longer do it. Leon and Guy are more interested in our slime. We also notice that there is a character always mentioned as an informant, known as the Merchant, who reports everything that happens with Rimuru and his surroundings. In the area of the Dryads, Rimuru has created a body and an orb based on Beretta's core, and Trini's soul has been inserted into the orb. Rimuru added some of his powers so that she can use the body he created. Unexpectedly, this caused her to evolve into a Dryas doll Dryad, which allows her to move outside the Jura forest. Rimuru is preparing his outfit for the Walpurgis. Meanwhile, he listens to the news about the Benimaru says they will ambush Clayman's army, and Geld adds that the final battle will be in their former home, which was devastated by Clayman. Additionally, we learn that Benimaru has an ability that allows him to know everything that happens on a battlefield, giving them confidence in victory. Benimaru clarifies that Sui and Hakuryu want to attack Clayman's castle from behind to completely defeat the enemy. However, Shuna mentions that it is better not to attack directly because Clayman has the ability to control people, so she'll go with them to prevent that. Rimuru is hesitant to send Shuna, but Sui and Hakuryu think they will need her, convincing Rimuru to let Shuna join the fight. Finally, Sui reports that some of Milim's soldiers have joined Clayman's army, but that doesn't seem to pose problems for Rimuru. Benimaru's plan is working. Clayman's army is marching into the trap. However, they know that the strongest foes won't fall for the trap, so the soldiers from Urizania volunteer to go after them, a decision Benimaru accepts. The attack and use of the trap begin. Geld and the Orcs initiate the attack, using a combined ability to destroy the floor and trap their enemies. However, some flying enemies evade the trap. Gabiru and his men take care of them. Those who fell try to climb back up, but the Orcs knock them down again, and the other soldiers of Rimuru waiting below begin to most of the soldiers. Phobio heads to fight Footman and Tyr. Phobio initiates the attack, but both evade. Geld appears from a portal and decides to go against Footman, but the fight seems tough. Meanwhile, in the enemy's base, they realize they are being defeated. Yamza orders them to buy time until he brings Adalman. In reality, he is trying to escape the Clayman, but the magic seems to be sealed by Albus, who has already killed the soldiers around. Yamza has no choice but to fight Albus. They both start attacking. Both are very similar in close combat, but Yamza is known for using tricks. He uses his men to distract Albus. When Yamza is about to attack her, Gabta appears to defend her. He brought his men to take care of Yamza's men, making the fight between them two. Gabiru is fighting Herms, and although they are evenly matched, it's not the case for Sufia, who is fighting Midre. It's clear that Midre is stronger, even though Midre constantly trains with Milim. However, Midre is just playing as he begins to talk with Sufia, mentioning that they are Milim's men, not Clayman's. Herms is defeated by Gabiru, so the fight against Midre becomes 2 against 1. Before fighting, Sufia asks if Midre is human, as his strength doesn't seem human. Midre explains that his people are the Dragonutes, descendants of humans and dragons, although they are more human with the strength of dragons. Albus and Yamza continue their battle, but they are evenly matched. Yamza then uses another trick, allowing him to create a clone, making it a 2-on-1 fight. However, this is not a problem for Albus, who finally uses her battle transformation, using her pure power to destroy the soldiers around her and ultimately defeat Yamza. He surrenders, but Clayman doesn't allow it, making him swallow an orb that mutates his body into a Charidus. Gabiru and Sufia seem to be trained by Midre, when he and the others feel the presence of Charidus. Although it's not the original one, if it eats enough, it can become something worse. Midre orders his men to rise and heal everyone, even Gabiru's men, as they will need the power of several to defeat Charidus. Albus is trying to harm it from afar and gain time. Midre orders his men to focus on evacuating and gaining time against Charidus. Gabiru and his men head to the front as they have experience fighting Charidus, and Sufia will take care of the evacuation along with the others. Benimaru arrives at the battle, delivering a sword slash that pierces a part of Charidus. He wishes to test his power, but there's no time for games. He uses his black flames to completely destroy it, surprising Albus, as Benimaru's current power is something new to everyone. Benimaru leaves command of the army to Albus as he has to go elsewhere. He heads toward Midre and the others, but Gabiru and Sufia explain the situation, calming Benimaru. However, Midre is very excited to fight Benimaru, and both understand that they want to test each other's power. Once again, their men stop them, calming them down. Geld and Phobio are defeated by Footman and Tyr. Even though Phobio is on the brink of he wants to fight, even if it's to buy time. However, Tyr is strong and skillful, knocking him out. Gelb tries to help Phobio, but Footman stops him and leaves him in his last strength after the recent attack. Luckily, Footman and Tyr leave them alive, but it was all part of Benimaru's plan to gather information from them, as they are quite talkative. Finally, Benimaru has won the battle against Clayman. Rimuru is preparing for the Walpurgis, but before going, he wants to know more about the other demon lords. Veldora and Ramirez tell him that there are demon lords stronger than Rimuru, even at Milim's level of strength. However, their conversation is interrupted as Ramirez and her entourage are picked up by Misery, a high-ranking demon in Guy's service, followed by Rimuru and his group. Hakiru, Sudi, and Shuna head to Clayman's castle, but on the way, Shuna senses enemies around, including someone stronger, Adalman. Adalman has the power to control the undead, a seemingly simple power, but not easy to overcome. Hakiru initiates the attack, but Adalman summons a skilled swordsman to fight Hakiru. Sumi takes advantage of the distraction to attack from behind, but Adalman has a dragon under his control. Sui destroys it, but it has resistance to... Shuna steps in, angered by the consequences of Clayman's plans. She sets up an area where Adalman's minions won't interfere, making the battle one-on-one. Adalman uses constant attack magic against Shuna, but she defends well. Adalman then uses magic, but Shuna counters with sacred magic, revealing that Shuna can somehow use sacred magic. Adalman was previously a priest of the church, but felt betrayed by his beliefs. Adalman understands that sacred magic can be used by anyone if they believe enough. He uses the most powerful sacred magic, Disintegration, but Shuna anticipates this and overwrites it with Overdrive, defeating Adalman with a single blow, causing all to fall. Somehow, Adalman and several of his soldiers survived the attack, but it broke their ties with Clayman. They humbly request to meet Rimuru as they wish to have faith in something again. Shuna accepts, knowing they will likely be disappointed that Rimuru is a slime. However, they must first attack Clayman's castle, so Adalman leads them. At the Walpurgis, Rimuru is the first to know this guy. Next is Demon Lord Drago, followed by Valentine, but the one who stands out the most is his servant, who seems to be a true Demon Lord. Demon Lord Dino arrives, seeming to get along with Ramirez. Frey arrives, seemingly accompanied by Karion, but Rimuru doesn't believe it's him. Then Leon arrives, who directly speaks to Rimuru, clarifying that they won't get along from the beginning. Finally, Milim arrives, but she is accompanied by Clayman, demonstrating from the start that Milim is under his control, upsetting Rimuru. The Walpurgis begins with Clayman giving the opening speech. Clayman explains his version of events, accusing Rimuru and Karion of breaking the treaty between the Demon Lords, mentioning Jura's and an attempt against him. Milim learned of all this and went to fight Karion. Clayman finishes his speech and it's Rimuru's turn. Rimuru begins by denying all of Clayman's claims, especially regarding Jura's, as she is alive. Clayman excuses this by suggesting that his spirit could have taken her body. Rimuru presents evidence of Clayman's atrocities, how he turned Yamza into Charybdis, and how Tyr and Footman declare that the whole plan was Clayman's doing. Rimuru tells him that his army has fallen and he will soon go after him. Clayman is nervous about Rimuru's evidence and starts creating more lies. However, Drago intervenes, stating that if Veldora resurrected, there was no need for Karion and Rimuru to join forces. Clayman continues inventing lies about Rimuru, claiming it's better to end him for the things he does. Rimuru asks for evidence of his claims, as words alone prove nothing. He also points out that Clayman is responsible for reviving Charybdis, and Phobio can testify to that. Furthermore, the evidence shown of one of his soldiers being turned into a Charybdis is sufficient proof. Rimuru then states that Clayman will... Rimuru disappears the meeting table, realizing that Clayman was using his power to steal his soul. Rimuru thinks it's normal to use magic like this, so he decides to use it. However, Guy clarifies that using magic in the Walpurgis is forbidden. Rimuru addresses everyone, stating that he only wants to live in peace in his country, but if anyone disturbs him or his people, he will kill them, whoever they may be. Guy agrees with Rimuru's words and tells Clayman that if he has a problem with Rimuru as the demon lord he is, he can destroy him if he wishes. He also tells Rimuru the same, clarifying that if he defeats Clayman, he will be accepted as a demon lord. Clayman accepts the fight but orders Milim to also fight Rimuru. Guy has no issue with this, as it is Milim's will. Rimuru has no choice but to save Milim while fighting Clayman. Rimuru thinks it's better to let Clayman fight Cheyenne, making it clear that he's just trash. Cheyenne attacks Clayman with several blows without waiting for an order from Rimuru. Clayman regenerates from the blows. Rangan joins the fight and summons two wolves to fight alongside him. Clayman summons a monster in a black cloak called Viola and the Nine Heads. The Nine Heads summons two minions. Rimuru realizes he is outnumbered, but Guy encloses them in a confined space to fight. Milim attacks Rimuru first. Shan fights Viola and Clayman. Reinga and his wolves fight the 9 heads and its summons. Rimuru knows he has no chance against Milim, so he decides to buy time until the system figures out how to free her from mind control. Outside the barrier, Beretta requests to join the fight. Ramirez informs Guy, who initially refuses, stating that the fight is only between demon lords, not servants. However, Beretta stands in front of Guy, stating that Rimuru is her creator and she wishes to help him. Guy is convinced by Beretta's words and asks about her lineage. Beretta reveals she's a high-ranking demon from a lineage with few remaining representatives. She also mentions that Rimuru has a demon under his command who is stronger than her. Guy is surprised by Beretta's lineage and that she considers another demon stronger than herself. With this, Beretta joins the battle. Cheyenne is struggling in her fight, unable to defend against 2 attackers, but Beretta arrives just in time to deal with Viola. Rimuru also has a tough time as the system doesn't detect any enchantments on Milim. However, the system notifies him that he can gradually devour Milim's power until she falls. This seems to work, but it's all a feint by Milim. Milim is about to attack Rimuru with all her power, but Veldora appears and takes the full blow from Milim. Rimuru is angry because he didn't call Veldora, who came just because he wanted to know the ending of a manga. Since Veldora is there, Rimuru promises to give him the last volume of the manga in exchange for entertaining Milim. It's revealed that Milim is Veldora's niece. This gives Rimuru time to help Ranga. They realize that 9 Heads doesn't really want to fight and is suffering from Clayman's control. Rimuru decides to help him and asks everyone not to interfere. Rimuru manages to free 9 Heads from the spell with the system's help and asks Ranga to take care of him. With one less opponent, Rimuru goes to help Beretta, but she doesn't need it as she has literally dismantled Viola to offer it to Rimuru in order to stay in his city. Rimuru has no problem with them staying, but will have to think about where to put them. Finally, it's Shan's turn to fight against Clayman. Cheyenne has the upper hand, but Clayman is too proud to admit he's weak, so he tries to control Cheyenne. His spells are ineffective against her, and in his desperation, Clayman reveals his grotesque true form. Clayman uses all his power, but Cheyenne overpowers him with sheer brute force, leaving him mortally wounded. However, he still has Milim under his control, so he orders her to save him. Milim is actually fighting Veldora, much to Rimuru's surprise as he thought she was being controlled. Clayman decides that if he can't win, everyone should with him, so he orders Milim to use her strongest and most destructive magic. Milim refuses, stunning Rimuru, who believes she was being controlled. Clayman realizes that nothing went as planned and confesses that he was given the control collar by someone else. He also confesses to Karion's, but Karion is not. He was hiding as Frey's companion, revealing that Frey was never on Clayman's side, only assisting in Milim's plan. Cheyenne finishes off Clayman in his desperation and Guy deactivates the barrier. With this, the problem with Clayman is resolved and Rimuru is relieved that Milim is okay. However, Karion is somewhat upset as Milim destroyed part of his kingdom. Rimuru reassures him that his people are safe and that they captured many of Clayman's soldiers to use as labor. In gratitude, Karion forms a perpetual friendship with the Federation. Frey mentions that Clayman must pay for his actions, but Clayman is on the brink of. He begins to remember why he did everything he did, to become a demon lord and resurrect his master Kazarian, fulfilling Yuki's desire to conquer the world to his liking. Clayman seems to accept his fate, but shows a will to live. The voice of the world offers him power in exchange for the souls he has taken, and Clayman awakens as a demon lord. However, this was all part of Rimuru and the system's plan to release the souls Clayman had trapped inside him. Rimuru asks everyone not to intervene as he will deal with Clayman himself to demonstrate his position as a demon lord. Clayman is ecstatic at the feeling of so much power, but still wants to escape and get used to his new power. He launches an energy to take advantage of the chaos of the and escape, but Rimuru absorbs it, trapping Clayman. Clayman continues to attack constantly, but Rimuru absorbs all his attacks. Since Clayman doesn't seem willing to surrender, Rimuru decides to torture him with blows to make him reveal the names of the true culprits. However, Clayman remains silent, so Rimuru has no choice but to destroy him. Clayman begins to mention Kazarian, and Rimuru devours him completely along with his soul. With Clayman destroyed, Guy accepts Rimuru as a demon lord, and many others agree, but Valentine opposes. Veldora stands up for Rimuru, stating that a servant has no right to an opinion. He reveals that the true demon queen, Luminus, was actually hiding as a servant, so she resumes command, and Roy, who was acting as demon lord, returns to serving her. Leon recalls someone named Kazarian as he was the one who killed him. Karion explains that Kazarian was a demon lord of the same race as Clayman, defeated by Leon, who then became a demon lord. However, Guy mentions that Kazarian's resurrection was very quick, indicating he had help. Rimuru is now on alert regarding Kazariim and his movements. Despite all the commotion, the Walpurgis must continue, and Frey speaks up, indicating that she wishes to step down as a demon lord and serve under Milim's command. She explains that the current demon lords are very strong, and compared to them, she is very weak. She also desires to help Milim become more responsible in managing her territory. Surprisingly, Karion also decides to step down as a demon lord and serve under Milim's command. Milim considers the advantages and compensations for their actions and decides to accept Karion and Frey. Guy also accepts the request, and the current demon lords are now 8. Because of this, they must decide on a name for themselves. Rimuru is chosen to name them, and although he doesn't want to, he gives them the name the 8 Stars, Octagram, which everyone likes. Laplace is searching for information in the church, but is found by Hinata. He manages to escape, but in the midst of his escape, he is found by Roy, who informs him that Clayman has... Laplace becomes so angry upon hearing the news that he attacks Roy with all his might, but his heart and him. This reveals that Laplace is very strong. Everyone returns to their respective territories, and when Rimuru returns, he is welcomed by his people, by his family. In the middle of the rain, an ogre and his group are in the middle of a brutal fight, but the ogres are losing. Only one is left, giving everything to survive, but he is surrounded in a ravine. His enemies launch themselves at him, and the fight continues in a river. We see that the enemy is Yamza and his men. The ogre is a mercenary who deserted to protect his people. He begins to attack Yamza, but as we know, Yamza is stronger than a normal ogre. However, this ogre named Hyro by Queen Tawa has a stronger will than his power. Despite his efforts, Hyro loses because Yamza uses his usual dirty tricks. Hyro wakes up in an unknown place with unknown people. Queen Tawa saved him, giving him a name and the souls of his companions. Hyro realizes he was saved and that his friends are gone, so he can only be grateful and indebted. An elder mentions his village as Hyro mentioned it in his dreams. He realizes he has been unconscious for 10 days. Hyro wastes no time and moves to go to his village. On the way, he steals a wyvern. When he arrives, he sees only his destroyed village with no bodies to mourn. The village was destroyed by orcs, and Hyro desires revenge for his people. In the forest, Gabda and Gabiru are being brutally trained by Hakaru, along with Geld, who is returning to his duties. Sylvie arrives and warns that Geld is being attacked. Rimuru with Cheyenne and Shuna is notified of the attack on Geld. Hyro is attacking Geld, and they have an incredible fight, but Geld only defends himself as he seems to recognize Hyro. Hyro, fueled by rage, unleashes fire from his body, increasing his power. Geld, realizing this, drops his and accepts his, but he is saved by Benimaru, who reveals their friendship. This calms Hyro, but he is still not happy with Geld's presence. Benimaru explains that Geld is now a citizen and ally of the Federation. Hyro apologizes for the trouble he caused. Shume, Cheyenne, Sui, Hakaru, and Kuro also become aware of Hyro, which makes them very happy. During dinner, they explain the situation to Rimuru, who welcomes Hyro. Hyro explains how he ended up where he is, working as a mercenary under Clayman's command, and how he deserted to warn the village about the orc attack. He also explains how he was saved by Queen Tawa and now helps her kingdom, which is struggling because resources are running out. Tawa uses her magic to keep the kingdom afloat, but this is slowly consuming her with a curse. Hyro decides to help by cultivating the Jura forest. The elders refuse out of fear of Veldora's wrath, but news arrives that Falmouth was destroyed by Rimuru's city and that Veldora has been revived. Hyro hopes they will be heard as rumors say Rimuru negotiated with Veldora. Rimuru adds information that Hyro didn't know, such as him currently being a demon lord and Clayman being... He also introduces Veldora, who gives them permission to enter the forest. However, Milim arrives and causes a commotion. Seeing so many strong individuals, Hyro requests Rimuru's help to prevent Tawa and her kingdom from falling. Rimuru has no problem helping and agrees to go to the kingdom of Raja. Rimuru and company head to Raja. On the way, one of the soldiers is hungry, so Shan decides to take out the food she brought. This causes the wyvern to and plummet. Rimuru rushes to save them, but the wyvern wakes up in time. Rimuru, who was behind them, realizes there is something strange about the water in the area. Hyro introduces them to the authorities, who thank Rimuru for the visit. With the introductions done, Hyro informs them that Veldora gave permission to cultivate in the forest, which pleases the elders. However, there is a problem. They don't have specialists in cultivation. But just then, Ramirez arrives with Beretta and Trini, who decide to support Raja with agriculture in the Jura forest. The queen is awakened, so Hyro takes Rimuru to be introduced. Hyro also informs Rimuru that he can treat her, to which Tawa agrees, trusting Hyro. Rimuru is curious about the tiara Tawa wears. She explains that the Tyra's power is necessary to protect her nation, despite knowing the consequences of using it. With this said, the system is used to check her symptoms, revealing that the Tyra has an unmovable curse, and that the poison in Tawa's body will gradually disappear as long as she doesn't use the Tyra. However, something seems to be halting the healing process, which raises suspicion for Rimuru. The system indicates that honey would be a great remedy for the poison. Rimuru explains everything the system indicated, but Tawa cannot stop using the Tyra, as everything would become contaminated without it. Rimuru assures he will take care of that problem. Rimuru and Tawa go to the lake, where Rimuru indicates he can purify all the poison in the kingdom. However, he finds it strange that the poison is not natural, but seems to be artificial. He discovers a curse in the middle of the lake and devours it, solving Raja's poisoning problem. The kingdom celebrates for having solved the problems plaguing the city, but Benimaru is still curious about the thing that poisoned the lake. Rimuru theorizes that the same being that cursed the Tyra probably also poisoned the lake. Hiro arrives and doesn't know how to thank Rimuru for what he did. Rimuru only asks that their kingdoms remain friends, which greatly pleases Hiro. Rimuru goes to see Tawa to check on her health, but she seems troubled with herself, envying how open Rimuru is with his people, while she is the opposite. Rimuru tells her that she is their leader and also their friend, just as she is with Hiro, so it wouldn't hurt to be more honest with herself and her people. In the Jura forest, someone is very upset about everything that has happened to Raja, especially to Tawa. This person named Lakua is a merchant who seems to be serving someone else, and they were the ones poisoning the lake. Hiro is in his village, lamenting not being able to save everyone before, but Benimaru arrives to accompany him and tells him that, although everyone has passed, he still has Benimaru and his friends. However, reports arrive that Tawa has fallen ill again, as the lake has been poisoned once more and a neighboring kingdom is mobilizing its troops against Raja. Rimuru has more suspicions about all the supposed coincidences happening in Raja, so he orders Sui to investigate everything happening there. Rimuru convenes an emergency meeting, clarifying that they will fight on Raja's side and ordering preparations to send aid. Diablo, who is there to report on Falma's progress, informs Rimuru that the one who cursed the lake to poison it is someone he knows and requests freedom to negotiate with that person. Rimuru, upon hearing this, gives Diablo full confidence to do what he can. Hiro is worried about Tawa's health, but Lakua appears, claiming to have a way to save the queen. Out of desperation, Hiro agrees to listen. We learn that there is a magic to exchange bodies, clarifying that since Hiro and Tawa are linked by the naming, it is possible between them, but there are still risks. Hiro disregards the risks and agrees to make the exchange, but it's all a trap, as Lakua gives him a cursed orb and through lies makes Hiro use it. Benimaru and his strongest members are teleported to Raja, but are met with the news that the queen has disappeared and Hiro is also missing. Rimuru orders Rangda to locate them. Hiro has taken Tawa and, accompanied by Lakua, is taken to a secluded place to perform the body exchange. Rimuru and his group try to locate Hiro and Tawa, but Sui, who investigated the reason why the neighboring kingdom is sending troops, notifies them that rumors are circulating that Raja has found the gold vein. The elders completely deny this fact, so Rimuru orders the elders to prepare for war. Tawa wakes up and realizes what Hiro is trying to do, trying to stop him. However, Hiro does not want to see her suffer anymore and asks to start the ritual. Lakua finally shows his true face and reveals his plans, awakening the orb inside Hiro, transforming him into a beast seeking only destruction. Tawa tries to calm him, but her strength is very weak. She tries to use the Tyra, but Rimuru and his people arrive to control the situation. Shuna protects Tawa, Benimaru confronts Hiro, and Rimuru and Ranga pursue Lakua. However, Lakua will not be caught so easily. To make matters worse, Sui informs them that the army of the other kingdom is about to reach Raja's borders, and Rimuru orders not to kill anyone unless absolutely necessary. In an unknown place, Diablo meets someone named Violet, who is also an ancestral demon. We learn that Violet is the one who cursed the lake and the Tyra because one of Tawa's ancestors prayed so much for help that Violet, mistaken as a goddess, gave her the Tyra but cursed her in return. The queen at that time accepted the deal because her people mattered more than anything to her. But this is more like a plan of Violet's, as over time, the curse will create a body for her to be born into the world. Diablo understands the situation, but clarifies that the deal he had with that queen indicated that only time would tell, but that things could not be accelerated by Violet's minions. This insults Violet, so they begin a battle, showing us how the ancestral demons fight, but since Diablo is now a named being, he easily surpasses Violet. She decides to use a giant attack, but Diablo easily dispels it. Violet reaches her limit, and her servants notify her that Lakua has interfered with the deal she had with Tawa's lineage, so Violet has no choice but to stop interfering with Tawa and her kingdom. Benimaru has a brutal battle against Hero using pure blows, trying to make him regain consciousness. Rimuru is still pursuing Lakyo, but they reach a dead end. Lakyo uses his wings to escape, revealing that he is a demon. The fight between Benimaru and Hero reaches the outskirts, but Hero becomes stronger and loses himself even more in his anger, destroying the city. Fortunately, the citizens evacuated in time. Rimuru is about to capture Lakyo, but the doctor treating Tawa, who is also a demon, confirms Rimuru's suspicions. Ranga is sent to take care of the healer, whom he destroys immediately, and Rimuru takes care of Lakyo. However, Lakyo refuses to fall and attacks Rimuru, who sees it as a game. When he is about to finish him off, Lakyo receives a call from Violet indicating that he is no longer useful. In his desperation, Lakyo decides to self-destruct using a cursed orb, but Rimuru only devours it and stops the completely. With Lakyo's we learn that the leaders of the neighboring kingdom are demons, so they must be dealt with. Benimaru and Hero continue to fight without stopping, but the damage is getting greater. Benimaru decides to go all out and use his flames, but his attack is not enough and Hero counterattacks. However, Tawa comes to Benimaru's defense. Seeing her, Hero remembers all the things he went through with her and stops. For a moment, he regains his consciousness and himself to remove the cursed orb from his body. However, using a cursed orb is basically a sentence, so Hero is... He thanks everyone for accepting him and thanks Tawa for allowing him to serve, but Tawa will not let him go so easily. She uses the power of the Tyra to revive him, but at the cost of her own life, a life for a life. However, we will not have a sad ending as Violet brings her back for interfering with the deal between them. With everything resolved, a banquet is held in the kingdom, and the elders do not know how to thank everyone for all they have done. Rimuru only asks that they sell him iron, as during the battle, a mine of that mineral was found. With this trade, Rimuru's kingdom and Tawa's kingdom declare themselves allies.